want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 13th of August. Today, another tragedy in the Channel. The government is under further pressure to tackle the crisis of migrant crossings in the Channel. 6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France.
And the US Attorney General has announced fresh investigations into Hunter Biden's business dealings in the run-up to the next year's presidential elections.
August holiday sales are booming as people are trying to get away from the typical UK weather. Spain and Greece, apparently, the most popular destinations at the moment. Have you booked your next getaway? I know I'm thinking of mine.
And how will the weather look today? Well, here's Marco Patanga from the Met Office.
We've got another day of sunshine and showers across the UK. Some of the showers could be on the heavy side. I'll have more details, though, later.
Absolutely. Very good morning to you and welcome. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Are you booking your holidays?
Yeah, I'm working all next week, and then I've got a week in Pembrokeshire with the kids
lovely.
And the missus and the in-laws. Looking forward to it. It's probably going to rain all week.
Well, I know that was my next comment, was going to be, cross fingers for decent weather, because that's why people do go away, because you just can't guarantee anything, can you? I mean, if you were lucky and you got a week of sunshine in Pembrokeshire, there is nowhere better to be.
Exactly, it's God's own country, same as Cornwall. I tend to holiday abroad these days because my in-laws are getting on a bit and they don't like flying anymore. In fact, so much so, my passport's ran out. I haven't even got a functioning passport.
You haven't?
Yeah, how disorganised and useless is that?
Well, it could take you a long time to get it as well.
And that keeps putting me off, though. I think it takes so long, what's the point? And the net result is I can't go abroad.
Yeah, that really is quite unusual nowadays to not have one, isn't it? I know there are a lot of Americans in America who never owned a passport.
That's right, yeah.
But they've got a very, very big country.
Yeah, and they can go from Alaska right the way down to the southern tip to New Mexico.
So there isn't the need, is there? But usually most Brits have functioning passports.
Yeah, I have to confess I have been exceptionally disorganised and rubbish this year.
Okay.
In that respect.
Get on with it, though. No, get on with it, and then at least you'll have it at some point.
Fair point.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're planning a getaway, I'd love to hear where you're planning to get away to, we can sort out, that will raise the spirits.
Yes.
But yeah, let's hope we get some decent weather today. It was quite nice yesterday afternoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, it went a bit rubbish. It went a bit sort of
It went
blustery.
on and off. Yeah.
It's what they call a good drying day.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Which is a positive
but that's something
spin.
I don't have, is a washing line.
Don't you?
No.
How do you get by with that one?
A tumble dryer.
Wow. Well, eco-friendly.
I know, it's not very eco-friendly, is it? But I don't have a washing line. Do you have a washing line?
I can get by with that one. I actually really like hanging laundry. I find it very therapeutic. I like ironing. I like all that sort of stuff. I'm quite a strange bloke.
You like ironing?
I do. I find it I like being organised.
See, I don't understand ironing at all, because by now, in the 21st century, we should have invented something that means you don't have to have everything ironed.
We were promised a lot, weren't we, by the robots of the future? They'd be drinking, they'd be making our drinks, they'd be driving our cars, and what do we get instead? Mobile phones that constantly hassle us.
Yeah. Talking of which, today I realised I hadn't charged my mobile and got in the car and it didn't work. Right. And I felt as though somebody had cut an arm off or something.
Yeah, it's going now though.
Yeah, it's going now because I've charged it up now. I've got here, but
it might conk out.
It was really. I felt really strange, and it was quite panicky how panicked I was without a working phone.
That's it. We become entirely dependent on them. That's the thing.
Me with no phone and you with no passport. We're a right pair, aren't we?
There we go.
Let's talk about our top story today. The government is under further pressure to tackle migrant crossings after yet another terrible tragedy in the Channel.
6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France yesterday, with a further 59 people being rescued by British and French Coast Guards.
Well, joining us now is Media Advocacy Manager and Migrant Support Coordinator at Samphire. That's Kay Marsh, and I think she joins us now. Good morning, Kay. Hello. I mean, this is just the most terrible tragedy to be talking about yet again. What, in your view, because you talk to these people, you deal with them, what would put them off getting into those dangerous small boats?
Well, I don't think we should be looking at what's going to put people off, because I think the honest answer to that is nothing. We have to remember that for the majority of people, the Channel crossing is just a very small part of a much longer journey, and it's the last small part of a much longer journey. So people who have been through all of that already aren't going to be easily deterred from making the last step. The only way we stop the small boats is by giving an alternative route, a safe and legal alternative route.
But Kay, even hours after yesterday's departure, the human traffickers were back in business. In fact, I think 75 arrived yesterday. And so the business carried on. The human traffickers don't care about people's safety, it would seem. In fact, the reports in the newspapers today, they're not even giving out life jackets to the majority of people on board. Surely safer routes would just encourage a higher influx into a country, let's face it, which is at breaking point in terms of our ability to support people in terms of things like health.
I don't think so. I don't think it would increase the number of people making the crossing or, coming here. It would just eliminate the need for them to risk their life in a small boat. A lot of people on these small boats do have a right to come here to claim asylum. But under the current rules, you have to be on British soil to do that. And there isn't safe legal routes enough. There isn't a sort of a catch-all route for people. So they're forced to make these irregular journeys to get to the UK to claim asylum. If people were able to make that claim or start that claim before reaching Britain, or be brought here safely, humanitarian visas, there are options, and that's the only way we stop people getting in the boats, because at the moment they have to.
Yes, and you said at the moment they have to, they're getting into the small boats. Are they aware when they do that? Are they aware of how dangerous it is? I mean, yesterday's tragedy is all over the front pages of the newspapers. People are talking about it on, frankly, nearly every TV news channel or radio. And we're all aware that it's very, very dangerous, but are they?
Yes, I think so. It's the busiest shipping lane in the world. It's a very short journey, but I think by now it's been going quite a while. I think people are aware of the danger, and I think that really hits home. The fact that the number of people that are still making that crossing, despite the danger, despite the deaths, I think it really hits home just how desperate these people are. And they're not going to be easily deterred. And really, you have to question, if somebody does know the danger and they're choosing still to get into a small boat, why are they doing that? Why would somebody put their life at risk like that?
Well, Kay,
because they are desperate and they're fleeing war, persecution, conflict,
Well, Kate, let me put that question to you, because they're not fleeing war or persecution or conflict when they leave France. They're leaving a safe country, and they've no doubt been through many safe countries to get to France. The majority of those rescued yesterday were Afghani men, a few Somalians, and I was wrong, by the way, 500 made the crossing yesterday, even in choppy waters and even after that disaster. So I put it to you, why are they making that crossing when they're leaving a safe country, France, where they could claim asylum? What's the draw of Britain?
I do find that to be quite a silly argument now, this far down the line. You know, they aren't coming from France, are they?
They
They're
are coming from
much
France.
further
They
afield.
departed from France
Of course, everybody
yesterday.
isn't going to stay in France. France takes a lot of people, as does Germany, Spain, lots of other countries. Not everybody is going to stay in France, but it is at the end of a much longer journey.
Yes, indeed, it's been a very long journey, but why doesn't it stop in France? Why do they want to come to Britain?
Not everybody does. You know, there's several reasons why people might want to come to Britain: language, family reunification. You know, but a lot of people settle in other countries too. You know, we don't take the most in Europe. It's spread across Europe. You know, there's a lot of people floating around, and yes, we take a lot of people, but as do a lot of other countries.
But the point remains, it's a perilous journey. You've spelled that out. The facts spell that out. Yesterday was the biggest loss of life in the Channel since November 2021, when 27 died. It seems inevitable these things will happen again. When you look at the perilous state of the craft, they're barely seaworthy. I've seen a lot of these in Dover. No doubt you have. That's where you're based. You know these craft are designed for a one use. They're designed by human traffickers who clearly don't care about loss of life. They're simply trying to make money. Surely a safer, more humanitarian way of dealing with this for everybody concerned would be to contain this issue in the mainland, in Europe, in France.
That's idealistic, though, isn't it? I mean, I think after a few years, we have to admit that that isn't going to happen. You know, we have to work within our own limitations here. It's clear that deterrents don't work. It's not going to put people off. So we need to change. We need to change tack. This is a humanitarian issue. We need a compassionate solution.
When you talk to these people, what is it that they say about that? What would they like to happen?
Well, I think I'm somebody who knows what the options might be. Do you know what I mean? Not a lot of people do know what the options for safe legal routes are. But of course, we use humanitarian visas with the Ukrainian situation. People were brought here safely and legally, never having to navigate the asylum system or get into a small boat. So it can be done. We do have mechanisms available, but they're very, very narrow, and they don't catch everyone that is allowed to be here. So we know now that nothing is going to work, nothing is going to deter people. We need to start looking at how we get them here safely and process them quickly.
Kay, Stephen Kinnock, Labour's shadow immigration minister, today in the Sunday Mirror has said one thing that his party would be tempted to look at is making those who successfully get asylum more productive members of British society. I'm assuming that means they'd be granted work visas. Is that something that you would like to see?
Yes, absolutely. You know, the right to work in this country at the moment, you know, we have a massive backlog in the asylum system, which means we have a lot more people waiting on a decision than we usually would have, because it's taking a long time to clear their cases. So if we gave people the right to work when they've been here for maybe 6 months, still awaiting their asylum claim, we wouldn't have to house them, we wouldn't have to give asylum support, because people would be allowed to support themselves. At the moment, they're not, so we have no other choice but to support them, to keep them alive. If we gave the people the right to work, they would fill gaps in the workforce. You know, it would bring money through tax and national insurance contributions, and the asylum support bill would go way down.
Certainly, as you say, whatever we're doing at the moment isn't working. Kay Marsh, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
It's a quandary, isn't it? It's a real quandary. Kay accused me of being idealistic. I would throw that back at her. This thing about allowing asylum seekers to work, I think, will become the greatest pull factor across all of the world.
The greatest pull
factor.
Yes.
Because we know that roughly about 75% of asylum applications are granted. If the immediate right to work was then the reward for that, I think we would be absolutely inundated with people making that journey, even more so than now. I think that's just wishing in an endless supply of cheap labour, the kind of thing that people thought was ending with Brexit. What do you think?
Well, yes. something's got to be tried, hasn't it? Something different has got to be tried. Because the bottom line is, as Kay was saying, that what we're doing at the moment isn't working.
Yeah, and it was really like saddening and I think sickening to see yesterday that even after the disaster, the boats were still being punted out by the human traffickers, and you have to wonder if they even care.
Well, of course
about
they
the
don't.
safety.
They don't care.
Yeah, and that is why this trade surely just has to be stopped at source. I mean, let us know what you think out there, because as Kay said quite correctly, what we're doing now just isn't working.
No, that's right. Something's got to be tried, but it's got to be something that doesn't make things worse.
Correct. Well, it can't get worse than yesterday, can it? I mean, that
well,
kind of
it could. It could.
Yeah.
It's just terrible to see it happening again, isn't it?
It is.
Let's move on. It's 6:13. A very good morning. Now, over on the other side of the Atlantic, the US Attorney David Weiss has been appointed special counsel in the ongoing investigation of the US President's son, Hunter Biden.
Now, the scope of Weiss's inquiry will now focus more on the younger Biden's business dealings. This comes as Hunter's own lawyer, Chris Clark, demanded a fair resolution on behalf of our client.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
No.
Let's speak to the Professor of International Politics at the University College Dublin, Professor Scott Lucas. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us so early in the morning. You couldn't make it up. It just seems as though everybody is trying to score points off each other, and by going for the children of the president, for heaven's sake. What's going on? Can you explain to us?
I mean, I think it's really important, and as you just noted, that you've got to cut through political manipulation and a lot of political distortion to get to the legal facts of the case. The legal facts are is that this spring, there was a plea bargain presented to a court in which Hunter Biden would plead guilty to failure to pay taxes. He did pay back taxes and penalties of more than $1 million, but there was going to be a misdemeanor charge for his initial, let's say, negligence in paying his bills. Then there was a second charge, which was that he had possessed a gun while under the influence, in this case, of cocaine. And what the judge said is, look, I'm not convinced that the gun charge is a misdemeanor. I think it might be a felony. You folks, the prosecutors, Biden's lawyers, need to go back and review it. They went back and reviewed it, but they could not come to a resolution of this. I think, without knowing for sure, that, of course, Biden would not want to plead guilty to a felony, which could carry potentially a sentence in prison. And so at that point, it was announced, all right, that the Justice Department is going to have this special counsel, David Weiss, who's been investigating this case for years. And we can talk about the reasons for that. I think it may be that, but we don't know, there may be new evidence. It could be, secondly, that it's leverage to get Biden and his lawyers to finally agree to a plea bargain. Or thirdly, I think it could be an attempt to accelerate this, get this case resolved before we get into 2024, which does happen to be a presidential election year.
Isn't it the case, it's fair to say, that there is so much tit for tat going on here, and it kind of exposes to us in Britain the political nature of the American judiciary? You know, we have a Democrat going after, appointed by President Obama, former President Obama, going after Trump. We have a Republican going after Biden. Is this just political tit for tat designed to cause damage during the presidential elections, or do you think we'll actually see convictions here?
Again, the legal facts on both sides, starting with Biden, and that is, you know, the legal process has been observed for years through here. This case was prosecuted, evidence was collected, it was presented before a grand jury, an indictment was returned, and then you had the question of whether you go to trial, which was we are now. Nobody who's a legal specialist says that there's been a violation of legal process on this. I must add also that there has been no evidence presented that there is, quote, to use the words of all the Trumpists and a guy named Nigel Farage, that there's a Biden crime family. There's been no evidence tying Joe Biden to any of Hunter Biden's possibly illegal activities, including the business activities. Now, on the other side, I think you're referring, although you were kind not to name him, to Donald Trump. Donald Trump faces 3 sets of indictments, 4th set of indictments likely to come down in Georgia this week or next. And those indictments were carried out after a fully above-board legal process, whether it was the case of interference in the 2016 election through the payments to Stormy Daniels, whether it was the movement, possibly illegal, of classified documents from the White House to Florida, or whether it was the attempt to overturn the 2020 election culminating in the Capitol attack, the Justice Department prosecutors moved in accordance with the law. So did judges. They've given Trump's defense lawyers opportunities at every count to talk about the proceedings that are going on, which is why we will have these trials next year, not because it is, quote, a political witch hunt. It's the question of legal accountability, with Donald Trump presumed innocent until someone, if anybody, decides that he's guilty.
It is extraordinary, as you said, though, that these particular legal arguments are going on at a time when both candidates are going to go to the country and ask to become president. It's extraordinary, isn't it? It just looks so bad.
It's extraordinary, but we've lived in extraordinary times for several years, both here in the UK and in the United States. I think here's the starting point, which is fundamental, and that is no one from any side of the political spectrum should be able to use political manipulation or political spin to put their thumbs on the scales of justice, whether it be for Hunter Biden, whether it be for Donald Trump. And I have to be honest with you here, that the tactics of many who support Donald Trump, including Donald Trump himself, is precisely to do that. By getting the media to talk politics, and not talk about the legal process and the legal system, it assists Trump in trying to undermine that system. That the case is not that he's the defendant here, but the judge is corrupt, the prosecutors are corrupt, the jury is corrupt, professors like me are corrupt, even folks like the media, corrupt. Got to clear off that white noise and stick with what are the facts, folks, what's the process, and respect that process.
But Scott, I wonder when push comes to shove if any of this will count for a row of beans anyway. I mean, Donald Trump's popularity has soared every time he's been indicted. His funding has rocketed. The gap between him and Ron DeSantis has increased. He looks like the front runner. And then on the other side of the coin, the White House are calling the allegations against Hunter Biden insane conspiracy theories. And there we have it. Both sets of political opponents are saying this is made up, this is a political attack, the public don't know what to believe, it probably won't convert anybody on either side. So is this really just a circus?
Well, you know, on the political side, we still got 6 months before the first Republican primary and caucus. And we've got, I think, 15 months before the general election in November. And a famous guy over here named Harold Wilson once said a week's a heck of a long time in politics. So we'll see what happens. I mean, a couple, I think, notes, if you want to go politically, before I give you the big closer here. That is that Donald Trump has actually sunk a bit in the polls for the first Republican contest in Iowa, which is comes up next January. He had been running at about the mid-50s. He's now dropped to around just over 40%, about 44%. So the indictment has had an effect in that state. And there are a lot of other heavyweight candidates out there, whether it's Mike Pence, the former vice president, former UN ambassador Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, the first significant black candidate to run for the Republican nomination. But here's the big thing. Look, if Donald Trump wins the election, if enough people support him, that's fair enough. If he wins legally, rather than trying something such as in January 2021 to take the office illegally, that's fair enough. But that political process should not be used to say, oh, well, the legal process isn't important. The legal process can be dismissed. We don't need the legal process. That is, as I said, attempting to sweep away justice in the names of someone's political advantage. And there's a fundamental in the system. Doesn't matter if the guy's name is Trump, Biden, or Scott Lucas. You don't use politics. You have to be accountable for what you've done before a court of law, not just the American voters.
Absolutely. It must be very frustrating, I think, for the American voters who maybe want to talk about the important things that affect their lives. Yeah. And here, as you said, all the media is giving is white noise and debate about these side issues, really. Maybe they're not side issues. I mean, it is important, but do you see what I mean? I think the American public probably want to talk about real things that affect them. Yeah.
Absolutely, Anne. I mean, for me, this is the most important election in my lifetime. And I think it's the most important election, arguably, since the end of the American Civil War. You've had a real threat to the American system itself that culminated in the Capitol attack. But you also have to remember we've got women's rights that are out there, including the question of abortion rights. Yeah. We've got the questions of LGBT rights that are out there. We've got the question of immigration. and dealing fairly with immigrants. We've got the question of the economy, as everybody does. And the American economy is doing better, but the question is, can it keep doing better in terms of housing, education, healthcare, where there's a serious issue in that we don't have the type of healthcare system in the U.S. that you have here. You know, you see where I'm stacking all of this up? At the end of the day, what matters are two things. We have to have a legal system that works, and that's fair enough. But at the same time, we need security for Americans, which isn't just based on somebody going out and banging out a tweet or some platform like Truth Social saying, it's all about me.
Fascinating stuff.
It is,
we could talk all day, but sadly, we have to move on. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Professor Scott Lucas. Brilliant.
Yeah, I think both sides of the Atlantic, I think everybody's feeling, can't we just talk about the things that, you know, like the money.
Policy.
Yes, exactly. And we're just getting sidetracked all the time.
But America is incredibly divided. I think if you think it's bad here, it's astonishing over there. It really is. My sister lives in Texas. I predicted Trump to win the last election based on talking to lots of Americans back in 2016. And it's incredible how divided it is now. And
you know, with everything happening in the States there, the lawyers are getting rich.
Yeah.
With everything that we're trying to sort out here, but you know, down to the small boats crossings, the lawyers are getting rich all the time, isn't it?
Precisely.
Is that the great lesson of the present at the moment? Is the only thing to be is a lawyer?
But one thing's for sure, Anne, as political journalists, it's going to be one heck of a ride, the presidential race. Yeah. It's going to be fascinating.
Very interesting. Look, we've got plenty more to come. Shall we find out about the weather first?
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Britannia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so. A mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today, though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today. Some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers. And that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice, though, the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature, as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest, though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day, whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers. And temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, if you're in search of guaranteed sunshine, then maybe you're planning to go abroad. However, Martin can't because you haven't got a passport at the moment. Well, Ellie says, get it sorted, Martin. I've just done mine online and it arrived within 2 weeks, to my amazement.
Yeah, and Pat in Bradford is saying, is that the same thing? Just renewed mine, took 2 weeks.
Yeah, so did Michelle in Cheam. She said, we needed to renew our passports last month, 1 week from photos taken to online application to delivery. Fantastic service. Gosh, time was, it used to take months, didn't it?
Yeah, and Raymond says, I renewed mine earlier this year. I went to the post office in person and did it digitally. It was about 95 quid and I had it within 1 week.
And Sandra says, Martin, you can do it online. A few weeks ago, mine came back within a week. Credit where it's due. Excellent service from the passport office.
I have a confession to make. I took 2 photographs myself on my phone and both I looked, A, terrible, and B, when I uploaded them online. So I have tried. They were both rejected for having too much shadow.
Yeah, actually, a passport photo can be quite difficult to take dead right. Yeah, sometimes it's better to go either to a professional or because they're used to it, they're set up.
Yeah.
Or just one of those passport, the photo booth things.
Yeah, see, I
mean, they're always awful photographs, aren't they? But then...
See, I did that last time. I went to my local chemist. I stood there, like a police mugshot, and I looked like a wanted criminal.
That's how you're meant to look on your passport.
and I took it to I went to Victoria Passport Office. That's now closed, so you can't do the in-person appointments on the day. They've moved it right down onto the coast, and they moved it out to Isle of Dogs somewhere. So that's gone.
You've got to get... sorted.
This terrible photograph for 10 years, so maybe it's the vanities.
And that's interesting in itself as well, because I've just recently been on holiday and coming back with my sister. The thingy didn't work, the automatic thingy didn't work. So she had to go and actually talk to somebody in person. And he didn't like the fact that she looked so different from her passport photo.
Well, because she looked quite bland.
Because it was 10 years ago. And you can change a lot in 10 years.
You can.
And her hairstyle had changed and the general look of it. And he honestly didn't believe it was her for quite a long time.
So you're not only rejected
he wanted all sorts of other ID to prove it was.
So not only slowed her up, but he also offended her.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look a lot older.
It wasn't older, although in 10 years you do get 10 years older, don't you?
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
just very different. Hairstyles change, whole looks can change, so you can have a bit of a problem.
But I'll tell you what, thank you to Ellie, Michelle, Pat, Raymond and Sandra. You've inspired me to get my butt in gear.
Yeah.
To do it.
Yeah, and as for ironing, Jane says she's got a high washing line. Everybody was quite shocked that I haven't got a washing line.
Yeah,
I haven't had one for years and years. But I think when we're trying to do something about global warming and all the rest of it, maybe I shouldn't be tumble drying everything either.
I've got one of those that you pull up and it kind of expands, and I've got a washing line at the back, and I love hanging laundry. I think it smells so much nicer when you get fresh air in it.
That's what Jane says. She said I've got a really high line that you pull up and down, and I love it. Washing dries really quickly and smells lovely.
Yeah, it's got the outdoor smell of freshness. It puts a spring in your step.
There you go.
There we go.
Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. Plenty more to come, including all the showbiz news and gossip with Stephanie.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin. It's 6:31. Now, we're going to talk about a group now that I've never heard of before. But I'm talking about them today.
And I think that's the fascinating thing, because the 1975 frontman, Matty Healy, has landed the band in hot water this week after being asked to fork out £2 million in damages for allegedly breaking a contract terms during a show in Malaysia.
Should we find out what exactly happened? Because Stephanie might be able to explain it. What on earth went on?
Oh, there is a price to be paid for campaigning against Malaysia's anti-LGBT laws. So Matty Healy, last month they were performing at the Good Vibes Festival
in Malaysia,
where homosexuality is illegal.
Yeah.
So he kissed his bandmate Ross MacDonald, full pucker on the lips, and then the rest of the festival had to be cancelled. So it was a 3-day festival. The festival got pulled. They've now been banned from playing in Malaysia or even coming back to the country. So we thought that was the last of the story, but now the production Future Sound Asia have come out and said that they will be suing the band for £2 million.
Yeah.
They said that the festival had received pre-show written assurances from the band that they would adhere to local guidelines. So for the 3 things that they're suing them for now is abusive language, equipment damage and indecent stage behaviour. And they're saying that, sorry Martin, they're saying that also at the festival people have lost their livelihoods because the whole 3-day festival was cancelled.
Oh, I see.
And
Fair
creative
enough.
opportunities have been missed. They've said it's also affected the reputation of this 10-year festival.
Right, that's interesting. I wasn't aware that other people had lost out on their payday.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, Matty Healy, of course, was formerly linked. He's Denise Welch's
son,
and he was formerly linked to Taylor Swift.
Where he was punching.
So it's not like his persuasion, as it were, but he was making a political point. If you couldn't see that, radio listeners, it was a very long, protracted...
Very long kiss.
20-second smacker.
You see, I don't mind him making that statement, but I think as well, like, the PR on both sides got it wrong because he's been quite vocal about supporting the LGBT community in the past, but he should know he's going to Malaysia where it is banned. So if you want to make a statement, you say we're not going to perform at all. But now that you've gone there, locals have now been taken out of money. You can't go
And he
there.
thought he was being clever, clearly, didn't he?
So the big question is how are you going to pay this £2 million fine? You know, maybe someone could bail him out, but they're not a big band where they've just got lots of money rolling in like that.
It's an interesting one because if you know Malaysia, I've been to Malaysia, it's a very strict country.
Yes,
it's very socially conservative. For example, you get caught with a minor amount of drugs in your hand luggage, you go to prison.
Yeah.
Now, they are very, very strict. Presumably, they would have known that. If they don't, then they're silly or they've been badly advised. In terms of their reputation, here we are talking about them.
Yes, I mean, I'd never heard of them before. Now I have. And maybe from a certain point of view, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
No, it's not. All press is good press in one way. You know, we're very liberal when it comes to LGBT over here. But actually, I was quite surprised to the reaction of the LGBT community in Malaysia because they were like, actually, we just wanted to have a good time at the festival. And they've kind of navigated in the country, if you are LGBT, you kind of keep it behind closed doors. So they still respect what's going on there. So actually, it didn't really go down quite well with their fans who are of Malaysian origin.
See, that's interesting. So are they now saying that there could be some sort of societal clampdown or there could be more bigotry and intolerance towards them because of it's been highlighted by the 1975?
Because they're saying that this festival, the reputation has been damaged now for a festival that's been going on for 10 years. It's only made worldwide headlines due to a gay kiss and due to a British band trying to kind of overturn their views on homosexuality.
And the £2 million, as you say, is a problem now, isn't it? And that's clearly something they didn't think of either.
And now they've been banned from the country. And as well, I was thinking potentially they could maybe get away with this because it happened in another country. Future Sounds Asia is actually saying they want to bring it to English courts. So they are dead on getting their money about this.
I think they'd have a hard time doing that. Normally, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, legal eagles out there, but if an offence happens in a territory, it is the business of that territory.
That's what I thought.
But nevertheless, £2 million it's quite a bit of change.
Yes, I wonder how they're going to manage that.
Price to pay.
Yeah, exactly. OK, are you back with us later?
I will be back later.
Got more news as well. Great.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, up next, all the news and views making the headlines in Sunday's newspapers. This is Breakfast on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin. Good morning to David, who's watching us from Spain. He said, I'd give anything for a little bit of the UK's weather. We have had constant high temperatures and humidity since June, and it gets very wearing over time. Roll on the cooler weather.
Yeah, and echoing your point of a lot of Americans don't have passports because they don't want to go anywhere, Jean says, I don't have a passport and I've never even been on a plane. I don't feel like leaving this lovely country. Jean, I admire your patriotism, but you're even worse than me at getting passports organised.
Well, if you don't want to go anywhere, you don't need a passport, I suppose,
Fair
do
play,
you?
yeah.
Not at the moment, anyway.
Home is where the heart is.
Not until they invent it. Right, let's take a look through today's newspapers. The Sunday Times, first of all, leading with almost 30% of students quitting some degree courses, yes, because they're struggling to cope at university.
And the big story of the day, the Mail asks, was the French patrol boat to blame for yesterday's migrant drownings?
The Sunday Telegraph reveals ministers will hire more barges to house asylum seekers and will host up to 5,000 in student accommodation and office blocks.
Oh, deep sigh. And the Observer leads with calls for safer routes across the channel. There's also a picture of Lioness Alex Greenwood consoling a Colombian player after England won magnificently in the quarter-finals yesterday.
And The Star says that boffins have come up with a secret plan to stop an alien invasion by inviting them to play chess.
Where do you even start with that?
Don't get it. Let's go through the newspapers now. Joining us this morning, writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and forecaster and author James Woodhousen. And a very good morning to both.
Top of the morning.
Emma, yes, let's look at the Mail. And the question is, was the French patrol boat that was there, was it in any way to blame for those drownings?
Well, this is the end of our very, very depressing small boats week in which we were going to get a grip on this crisis, and it's ended really in farce, shambles and tragedy as well. The Mail are reporting, it's believed, that there were French patrol boats actually shepherding and sort of guiding these overloaded small boats, one of which capsized in a shipping lane with 70 thrown overboard. As we know, 6 are confirmed dead and 2 more are missing, and I imagine missing is probably, going to be confirmed dead. But it's the presence of these French vessels which
yes,
have been
it's
angering.
extraordinary, isn't
it?
Really. What do you understand from the Mail happened?
Well, from what the Mail are saying, they're saying that possibly French authorities were encouraging desperate migrants to make the crossing despite the bad weather, sort of guiding them along towards Britain. That's the inference in the Daily Mail.
I mean, if that's true, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, this was based on a fisherman called Matthew Coker, border, it's actually quite easy to get GPS trackings. You can get it online, anyone can. You can see what ships are where in the channel at any one time. And what he's done, he's pieced together this evidence. And there are 2 French warships, one called the Cormoran and one called the Pluvier, which were escorting this overladen dinghy out of Calais Harbour. It was clearly overladen. According to other eyewitnesses, there were way too many on board. It was clearly overloaded. The big question, James, is why were they escorting them on to Britain when the more sensible thing to do, perhaps, may have been to have turned them around and got them safely back to shore in France?
Well, the answer is that Macron knows no limit to his willingness to bait Britain on any issue, trade, immigration, arms, you name it. And the immigrants who died are just pawns in his game. Now, there's plenty of anti-French sentiment. I don't buy it. There's plenty of anti-Macron sentiment. I do buy it. You know, if you only have to look at them sinking the Greenpeace ship, Rainbow Warrior, years ago, the French Secret Service did that. They've just had a blow against them in the Sahel in Africa. So they'll want to show patriotic Frenchmen that, you know, French imperialism is alive and well and living in the Channel. And if that can cock a snook at the Anglo-Saxons, that's all grist to their mill.
Surely that's a bit cynical. What I mean by that is, would the French play Russian roulette with lives like this? It's clearly like a very dangerous situation, but one that is becoming very politically charged now.
We have to remember, Martin, we're giving the French, we're giving France nearly £500 million a year to stop the crossing. And what this source is saying is the boat was being escorted towards Britain by a French Navy patrol vessel when it capsized. This is a French policy, as you say, designed to ensure the migrants make it to British waters as quickly as possible.
I don't think it's cynical, Martin. You know, it's impossible that these Navy people didn't work without the jurisdiction and oversight of the Elysee Palace. You know, they are cynical. They are cynical in the lives they're prepared to live.
And a really key detail, one that we picked up yesterday when Mark White broke this story live, was the fact that RNLI craft from Dover went deep into French territory, and it now appears also in this report the Mail are claiming that the huge majority, if not all, of the occupants of this vessel were brought back to Dover. Now, why would they be brought back to Dover if they were 4 miles off the French coast?
And despite the fact that they're paying up to £5,000 for a crossing, they're not being given, safety vests, life vests. And, you know, and Ian Duncan Smith, this is not an unsympathetic response to migrants. This is saying that this is a dangerous policy. This is a very dangerous policy because people are not going to make it. You know, so it isn't just about saying don't let the migrants come here. It's about preserving life.
Yeah, great point. James, let's move on to a story you have now, the front of today's Sunday Times. Our old friend Tony Blair, the Tony Blair Institute, back in the headlines. Why this time?
Well, because he's still doing business with the regime in Saudi Arabia, and he intends to keep on being engaged, as he said. Why we should be engaged with Saudi Arabia any more than we should with the Kremlin, doesn't satisfy me. But there's some great stats in the story from the Sunday Times. The Tony Blair organisation has 800 people working for it, $81 million behind it, $250 million from Larry Ellison, the yacht-owning CEO of Oracle. That's right. So, you know, they are alive and well and a force in the land, and you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see their malign influence.
What's Blair's end game? What does he want?
Himself, more prominence, more media coverage, and there's even some speculation he might take over from Keir, because you can't be worse than Keir. Wow. So, you know, we might get the tribute act, but in fact the real act from Tony Blair coming back.
I imagine he would say, if he were here, that you still have to talk to people. That, you know, you still have to talk to the Saudi government. You can't cut them off completely. You can only hope to have some influence by talking.
He is claiming that it's all about, you know, talking and diplomacy and building relations with these countries, but he seems to have done extremely well since leaving office.
It's not just about talk. You know, Saudi Arabia is being groomed at the moment to join the French, Italian, British alliance making fighter jets. And that's an enormous departure. We've always been far too friendly to them, too reliant on them, too forgiving after the Khashoggi assassination in 2018. They're now going to play possibly a major role in our defence. And the other thing to remember is they're heavily in debt. Because US interest rates have risen, Saudi debt has risen from about $20 billion to more than $100 billion. It's not a stable enterprise, both domestically, but also it's hooking up with China in a big way. We want to defend ourselves with them, with their connections with Beijing. I don't think so.
It's astonishing that, no matter what you think about Tony Blair, he certainly has had a very long-lived political career and is still around, and we're talking about him today. Shall we move on to...
Yeah, so Emma, in The Observer, you're looking at they're leading on an environmental story.
Yeah, it's depressing. More bad news on our waterways. I remember last summer we had all this stuff about raw sewage on the beaches and just, simply not fit for people to be swimming in. And this is about our rivers, sites of special scientific interests. And only 9% of our rivers and our natural habitats, freshwater habitats, are in a decent, favourable condition. So over 90% are in a very, very bad condition. We've got farming pollution, agricultural runoff, dredging, raw sewage, of course. We've got raw sewage, microplastics, really in an awful state. This includes the River Kennet, the River Avon in Wiltshire and Hampshire, River Wensum in Norfolk, the River Eden in Cumbria, the River Wye in Hereford.
That is
They're
terrible,
in an
isn't
awful
it?
state. Over 90%. And River Action, who's the big campaigning charity for this, are saying this is a total failure of regulation. When DEFRA were asked last week, for the stats, they said, oh, that's not a data set that we have available. How many of our waterways, how many of our freshwater habitats are in a decent condition? They weren't able to provide that information.
Who's to blame, James? Because water has become very, very political. Is it the companies themselves? Is it government policy? Is it a bit of both?
Well, it's really useful that you say that, Martin, because the striking thing for me about that report is how The Observer completely let off the water companies.
Yes.
And that's one thing, trend really to watch, which is let's bash the farmers. They're responsible for all our river problems. Let's not bash the water companies because they work with our regulators and they work with Natural England, Tony Juniper, all of these people. It's a complete whitewash. Don't let's blame the farmers. Let's blame the government for their useless implementation of regulation. There's tons of laws, they just don't do anything about it because they're stymied by people like Juniper. And let's not blame the farmers, let's put the blame where it belongs, which is with the regulators and the water companies. Farmers deserve our support.
Yes.
They get our support far too little in this country. We rarely rely on them. Water companies, different story.
Well, that brings us quite neatly on to Rishi Sunak, who's only got 7 months to save his skin, apparently. James?
Well,
as long as that.
7 months, I was going to say. So long as that, Anne. I thought you said 7 minutes.
What's really interesting about this story from the Sunday Express is not so much that, he's got 7 months to save his skin and if he can turn the economy round, it'll all be fine. But what's really interesting is how much his whole fate is determined by the civil service.
Yeah.
If you read the story, it's all about how the civil service closes down, in the light of local mayoral and general elections. They've got to schedule the whole electoral campaign, in terms of what civil servants are prepared to do. That's one striking thing. The other striking thing, which is really quite off the point but very relevant, is they believe that they can revive the economy, Rishi and the Tories, by getting people back to work. And what they propose to help that is that the government is considering introducing legislation that would require employers to provide occupational health support to staff. Now, it sounds great. Who wouldn't want a physio on their employer?
Who's going to pay?
But, well, there's that, but also, the employers going to want to know about your health, Martin, your mental health, your family problems, your behaviour, your longevity, and all of those things.
It's very intrusive.
Extremely intrusive. And if the occupational health, which sounds so cuddly, becomes a mandatory requirement for all companies, we're going to get a level of personal surveillance like you've never seen.
But also, if that's the big plan to revive our economy, then you slightly despair. What are we talking about? that's very important. Health of every employee is important, but there are bigger issues at stake here, aren't there?
There are first, aren't there?
First.
It is important to get people back to work, but, you know, a high
There are other reasons why people can't get back to work. Our failing transport system, the lack of childcare.
Exactly.
many other reasons.
Laziness.
And a boring workplace as well. You know,
No
boring
jobs,
management.
too many jobs, not enough interesting work.
Absolutely. Well, look, we've got to leave it there on that lovely note. Thanks very much indeed. We've got to move on, but we'll see you again in about an hour.
Great stuff.
Now, it's been a month now since Hollywood actors joined writers on the picket lines in the broadest industry shutdown since 1960, apparently.
Yeah, the disputes over the payment of repeat fees and the use of AI in the movie industry has had a major impact, not just in the States, but also in the UK.
Yeah, our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has been speaking to actors and technicians here in Britain who say their work has now completely dried up.
The premiere of Oppenheimer. No sooner had the actors walked up the red carpet than they walked back down again, showing support for an industry brought to its knees by industrial action. It's affecting British workers too. Stevie Hayward from Somerset mixes the sound for major movies. His work disappeared overnight.
Once they announced that, which I think was on the Wednesday of that week, by the end of the week, I stopped working, and a lot of my colleagues have also stopped since.
It's not just the major releases. Tim Hughes produces videos for social media, promoting films and merchandise.
So I can't get to movie premieres. I can't promote, I don't know, like a branded soap, which is from a movie or a film studio, because that is technically promoting the film or the studio. So I can't take on new deals.
At the heart of the dispute, artificial intelligence. Fears that AI will eventually replace live actors. Already, crowd scenes are created by AI, doing away with the need for supporting artistes. Actor David Burton says it's a dangerous precedent.
Once you uncork the bottle and let the genie out, it's very, very difficult to get the genie back in. So with things like AI, yes, I can see it progressing even further. And yes, it is a threat to people's jobs. But the one thing it will never, ever be able to do within film or any other aspect of the arts is be able to properly think for itself.
It's been a month now, and there's no sign of a breakthrough.
At some point, something's going to have to happen. Somebody's going to blink first, but how long that's going to take, I don't know. And it's about how prepared you were to have a sort of unplanned vacation where it could be they could sort something out in a couple of months, or it might not be until next year. Who knows how long it's going to take.
Only this week the prestigious Emmy Awards were postponed till next year. The industry employs more than 1.7 million people with a wage bill of $158 billion a year. The strike coincides with a 3-month walkout from Hollywood writers, meaning red carpets across the globe will be mothballed for some considerable time. Jeff Moody, GB News.
It just shows, doesn't it, if one set of people go on strike, it has a knock-on effect all the way down.
Yeah, the sort of supply chain is impacted. They've all lost their livelihoods. It's very sad.
Thanks very much indeed for getting in touch about the Channel boat crossings. I don't know whether anyone's got this solution, but Gary in Langham says the government has completely lost control of our borders and the toothpaste cannot be put back in the tube.
Yeah, good point. Well, good metaphor. Graham says creating more legal routes won't stop the boats. The economic migrants won't pass the legal process, so we will continue to use boats to get them here illegally.
Yeah. June says it's OK to have them working, maybe, but where are you going to house them?
Good point. Yeah. Often the infrastructure is overlooked, and also schools, dentists, all things like that. And Paul in Nuneaton says, what are the French doing? Why are we paying them for doing nothing? Paul, I think a lot of people
are going to ask that question after, particularly, this is the front page of the Mail, saying, was the French patrol boat to blame for migrant drownings? Yeah. Because the Mail has been investigating this and seems to be suggesting, very strongly actually, that that small boat was being escorted by French ships. Yep. Into English waters.
That's right. And then the rescue took place in French waters, but they came back to Dover.
It's extraordinary. Well, we'll try and find out more about that coming up. Don't forget, don't switch us off. We're still here. This is Breakfast on GB News.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Pitagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so, a mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today, some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers, and that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice though the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day, whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers, and temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 13th of August. Today, another tragedy in the Channel. The government is under further pressure now to tackle the crisis of migrant crossings in the Channel. 6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France.
And would you pay to get cuddled by someone? Well, people from all over the world travel to get hugs from a professional cuddler in the West Midlands. The 2-hour session costs £140.
August holiday sales are booming as people are trying to get away from the typical UK weather. Spain and Greece are the most popular destinations, apparently. Have you booked your next getaway? We are. Booking it now.
And most importantly of all, how will the weather look today? Well, here's Marco Pitagna from the Met Office.
We've got another day of sunshine and showers across the UK. Some of the showers could be on the heavy side. I'll have more details though later.
Well, welcome. A very good morning to you. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Passports. Still very, very interesting how many people don't have passports or have been very successfully getting them done in just about a week. Antoinette said, yes, the passport service has improved. However, the digital world and artificial intelligence gives cover to fraudulent claims.
There we go. Tam in Glasgow. This is all about because I haven't got a passport. I've been completely rubbish this year. It expired and I was so concerned it would take so long. I haven't bothered starting it, but I'm being proven wrong by people like Tam in Glasgow, who says this: I went to my local post office and the lovely chap did everything for me, including taking the photographs for 95 quid, got my new passport in just 10 days. And as I'm over 70, I have to renew my driver's licence every 3 years. Did that myself and got my new licence in 2 weeks. All is good. Tam, you're inspiring me to get on with it.
Do you have to do that after you're 70?
Yeah, because you
have to renew your driver's licence every 3 years.
Yeah, because of your physical and mental cognitive abilities.
Oh, crumbs. Yeah. Writing people off at 70, eh?
Yeah, it's a bit young.
Yeah, OK. Michael's wondering if you did go for that meal alone, because we were talking about it last weekend, were we?
Yeah.
He says, I don't know whether I can do it. I'm a 50-year-old guy who's become very lonely after friends and family seem to move away en masse. I'd love to know how Martin fared.
Yeah, I didn't go for that meal on my own. I've always found it been good. But I'll tell you what, Michael, if you're out there, why don't we go out for a meal?
Well, you don't know where he lives.
Well, if you're about, mate, why don't we go out together and have a meal? Why not? My shout.
Well, it sort of solves the problem completely then,
let's
doesn't
do
it?
that. Come on, Michael. That's a date.
He's offered. And washing lines. Now, you see, you haven't got a passport, I haven't got a washing line. Have never had a washing line, I don't think, actually. Diane says, I'm with you, Anne. We haven't had a washing line for years. We both have hay fever, and the advice is not hanging washing outside, because then you'll pick up pollen on clothes, and it will be all around you inside. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is a very interesting... See, I've never thought of that. So you live and learn on these shows. I love washing lines. I love that outdoor fresh smell. Always have.
Yeah, but you can buy it in a bottle now. Put it in the tumble dryer with your washing. OK, let's move on to today's top story, which I'm afraid is still very, very sad. The government is under further pressure now to tackle migrant crossings after yet another tragedy in the Channel.
Yeah, 6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France yesterday, with a further 59 people being rescued by British and French Coast Guards.
Well, joining us now is former Chief Immigration Officer at the Border Force, Kevin Saunders. Morning, Kevin. Lovely to see you again.
Good morning, Anne. Good morning.
Now, it's very sad because here we are again talking about a terrible tragedy, and one wonders what on earth happened. I don't know whether you've heard this news, that apparently there were 2 French warships actually, that appeared to be actually... well, it wasn't just patrolling, they were almost leading them into English waters. I mean, would that be normal? Have you ever heard of anything like that before?
Unfortunately, yes. The French often escort these people to the middle of the Channel, and they'll call us up. They'll call the UK Border Force up and say, hello, chap, we've got a dinghy here. They don't want us to rescue them. They want you. They want you to rescue them. So could you come and get them, please?
There's a lot of detail to drill into here, and I find this fascinating. So the people being rescued have a choice who they're rescued by. This incident was just 4 miles from the French coast. And my next question is, 4 miles from the French coast, A, why didn't the French turn them back? It was clearly dangerous, choppy waters, and clearly the craft was overladen with passengers. And secondly, why did British vessels go so deep into French waters to perform a rescue and then bring people back to Dover?
Well, that's something that we're going to have to wait and see the answer to that, because that does seem a little bit strange. What I do know was that the French were also rescuing people off Dunkirk yesterday. They rescued another 59 off Dunkirk yesterday. Now, whether this was exactly at the same time or not, I don't know. But the French will only rescue people if the people on the boat say they want them to. the French interpretation of the law of the sea is different to that of the UK. Under the French interpretation, the people have to say they want to be rescued. So what you have is this ridiculous situation whereby the French will escort them to the middle of the channel, them saying that they don't want to be rescued, and then a metre over the international line, they'll be saying we want to be rescued by the Brits. Ludicrous.
Astonishing.
I think anyone hearing that is just going to be so shocked because we are paying the French government £500 million to help stop the boat crossings, but it would seem that when it actually comes to it, the French are helping these small boats across the channel.
What the French are doing is that the money that we've given them, they're putting into their beach patrols. So they've upped the number of French police officers significantly over the 60-mile part of the French coast that the migrants are coming off to try and stop them getting in the water. Unfortunately, once they're in the water, the French aren't quite so helpful. And this will continue. This will continue. You will see more tragedies until the French amend this view. But they won't, because it's not in their interests to.
Kevin, this will be making many people listening and watching GB News today tear their hair out in frustration. £500 million. Yesterday was the fourth busiest day of 2023, even after the loss of life in the Channel. The craft kept going out into perilous seas. The evidence was gathered by a British fisherman, a guy called Matthew Coker, looked at the GPS locations of the ships. Very easy to ascertain that clearly these vessels were being escorted. But I want to ask you again, because I'm really stuck on this detail, why, oh why, did the RNLI go right into French territory 4 miles from Calais and then bring people back to Dover? It just beggars belief that £500 million isn't better spent returning people in danger who've gone overboard, who are in danger of losing their lives and indeed did lose their lives. It's not the most prudent use of time to return them to Calais.
To Dover? No, it isn't. And the RNLI went in because they were the only vessels that were there and that were available to actually help out. The French had deployed some vessels, but they needed more. And our lifeboats were actually on the channel. So it was fairly straightforward for them to get in. Now, look, your question is very relevant. Why did they bring them back to Dover? Why didn't they take them into Calais? And that I just don't know.
I mean, do you have a hypothesis?
Well, I understand they were quite serious cases that the RNLI picked up, and including stretcher cases. And I don't know. I just do not know why they took them in. I would have thought it would have been quicker to take them into Calais or Boulogne, but it may have been quicker to bring them back to the UK. I really don't know. But as you can see on your pictures, they were stretcher cases.
It just seems to me, you know, if you're 4 miles from one country and 21 miles, 17 miles from another country, then the 4-mile country is nearer. And that's not only a case of politics or whose responsibility this is, but in the case of getting them the most urgent medical attention, surely France is nearer. I just don't understand. I'm sorry to go on about this, Kevin, but I cannot get my head around why that choice was made.
And I can't either. I don't know the answer because it doesn't. With what you've said with the sums, it doesn't seem that the UK was the best place to bring them. But I really don't know the answer. I don't know why they wouldn't have taken them into Calais. I can only think that the French said no. But I mean, that's a guess. That I have nothing to back that up.
That's what I was going to suggest, is that to take them back to Calais requires cooperation from the French, and maybe we just didn't get any cooperation from the French. And again, that seems like the £500 million that we're spending, giving to the French government for some help on this, is just being thrown away, isn't it?
Well, it's I wouldn't go that far, but it does, when you have a situation like this, it does beg the question a little bit. I mean, the French are stopping more and more people getting into the boat. They're stopping just over 50% of the boats coming off the French coast. But until we can persuade the French to put the Gendarmerie Maritime onto the channel and work with us on the channel, and I don't mean, when I say work with us, I don't mean them telling us that they've got migrants for us to collect. I mean to actually stopping them. We're not going to solve this.
Can I just ask, because you'll know this, how physically difficult is it, once you've got a dinghy full of people, how difficult is it to actually make them go back? I mean, I suppose if you push them or put boats or ships in the way, you actually run the risk of causing a tragedy, don't you?
That, Anne, is a very, very good question. The Greeks did this in the Aegean to people coming off Turkey. The Greeks actually pushed the boats back. And in fact, Priti Patel, when she was Home Secretary, actually went out to Greece to see this actually in action. And it was totally supported by the EU. In fact, the EU described Greece as the iron barrier to the EU. So Ursula von der Leyen and her friends in Brussels totally supported this. But the Aegean is a lot different to the Channel. And to do this in the Channel, and Border Force have looked at the use of jet skis to push the boats back, but it is incredibly dangerous in the Channel, and you would have problems. You really would.
And Kevin, a key difference between the Aegean and what happened in Australia, where Tony Abbott stopped the boats and took them back to Papua New Guinea, of course, is that the craft in the Med and the craft in the Pacific around Australia were proper wooden boats with helms and all the rest of it. These craft are almost specifically designed for one journey only. They're flimsy, homemade death traps. As we saw yesterday, is there a sense here, do you think, that the boat makers are specifically engineering craft that cannot be returned, craft that would be dangerous if they were towed back, and therefore they are inviting disaster upon the asylum seekers?
No, I wouldn't go that far. What the people smugglers are doing is buying the cheapest boat they can get away with. So they're buying something that is basically not really fit for purpose, as we saw yesterday. There are suggestions that some of the boats that are being used now are a little bit sturdier and actually may come from Germany rather than the Far East. But the evidence for that isn't conclusive yet. But this is a huge problem, and until we get round it, there are going to be more incidents like yesterday. And I also want to add, if I've got time, it is that we hear that the only way to solve this problem is to have a returns agreement with Europe. Now, that's correct. It would be great. We can't have a returns agreement with France because Macron has said, you can't negotiate with me, you've got to negotiate with the EU. And I'm afraid that Brussels are more concerned with the number of people entering the EU via the Mediterranean than they are with what they regard as a tiny sideshow of people leaving the EU in northern France. So the idea that is coming out from certain areas of politics that if they get in, they're going to negotiate a returns agreement with Brussels. They've got more chance of platting fog than doing that.
Gosh. Well, we'll leave it there. What a thing to say, yes. Thank you very much indeed. It's always a joy to talk to you because you really understand the problem, because you've been there and done it, haven't you?
Thank you.
Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was singularly enlightening and yet also
very
eternally
depressing.
frustrating,
Yes.
that we're in this endless bind. And here we are talking about this again. The politics of this just never ceases to stagger and amaze me, Anne.
No. Is it punishment for Brexit as well, do you think?
Well, I mean, he was intimating there that Macron is saying, no, go to see the EU. And, of course, the EU, they wanted to punish us on the way out.
Yeah.
Isn't it just disgusting, though, if it comes down to politics? We're seeing tragedies. Kevin said he knows these waters. This will continue. We will see more loss of life. This should not be about politics.
Yeah. Well, if you've got a solution, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.com. Shall we bring you up to date with the rest of the headlines? Well, the death toll from the Maui wildfires reached 89 on Saturday, making it the deadliest US wildfire in more than a century. The total is likely to rise in coming days as search teams with cadaver dogs continue sifting through the ruins.
And China's foreign ministry has condemned the brief US visit by Taiwan Vice President William Lai, saying he was a separatist and troublemaker through and through. China's repeatedly denounced Lai's trip, which includes another stopover in San Francisco on Wednesday.
Now, here's a fascinating one for you. According to a new study, Botox injections in neck muscles can improve mental health diseases and even ease anxiety in Parkinson's patients.
More commonly known as cosmetic treatment to smooth wrinkles and front lines, injections are already used for involuntary neck spasms.
Well, let's talk now to Dr. Duku Batoka, who's a plastic surgeon and who knows more about this. Lovely to speak to you.
Hello,
we all think of Botox as being something that goes in the forehead and gives you a lovely
We always think
forehead.
about botulinum toxin as being something cosmetic, but actually, at the beginning, it was used as medication against uncontrollable muscle spasm. If I am remembering correctly, the first trial for this was done in 1981.
Really? Yeah. And so Parkinson's patients do sometimes get these involuntary spasms in the neck?
Exactly. So it's called cervical dystonia, and it can be a problem on its own or one of the symptoms of Parkinson. And the way I think Botox works is, besides releasing the somatic symptoms, which are basically stopping the muscle spasm itself, it gives the patients more confidence.
Yeah.
Because muscle spasms, especially in the neck, can lead to postural problems, can lead to social anxiety. And I think by doing this treatment, people get a sense of normality.
I think it's a wonderful story because normally we associate Botox with vanity, but of course this is about quality of life, it's about confidence, and it's about people feeling afraid of what's happening to their bodies, of how it's changing. And if this can calm that down and help to ease anxiety and give them confidence and give them a quality of life and the confidence to go out and about, it's a fantastic thing.
It is, but also what you have to take into consideration is that this treatment is bespoke. And like every medication, it has risks. So in most cases, getting the right dosage for the patient can have some risks. If you overdo it, you can get something called botulism, which
because
can
it's a poison, isn't it?
Exactly. And this can have some serious side effects. Some of them can be very scary, like difficulty breathing and difficulty swallowing.
So as you say, it's got to be bespoke to the patient.
Exactly.
You've got to be able to know exactly how the patient
Exactly, and it has to be done by somebody with a lot of experience.
And then if it is done, how long does that effect last?
It depends on every patient. So in about 85% of the patients, it stays roughly 3 months before they need the next treatment. But there are some patients who have immunity against Botox, although we have different types of botulinum toxin, and they do not seem to respond. So as everything, including vaccines, including pills, it has benefits for a majority of the population, not for everybody. That's why you have to go to a specialist and make sure this is the right treatment for you.
So if anyone's watching at the moment who suffers from Parkinson's and has these sort of symptoms, would they already know that this is available, or is it going to be news to them?
I don't think they do. I think very few people know that botulinum toxin can be used as a medication. I think when everybody hears about botulinum toxin, they first and foremost think about cosmetic and, as you said, vanity.
Yeah. We have Stephanie Tecci here with us again. Welcome back. It's always a pleasure. It's only been 5 minutes, but it's been too long. You're talking about Britney Spears, who's had a Botox treatment, but not just vanity sake.
Well, because here we're talking about how Botox can help benefit, alleviate people's pain with Parkinson's disease, where Britney Spears is purely vanity. And she's spoken about how Botox has gone wrong for her, Dr. Duku. She said that, you know, the injections have made her look like someone's beat up her face. She says that her eyelids have drooped. She said she's had to hide away for 2 weeks in order to get rid of the, you know, symptoms of a bad injection gone wrong. So, you know, Hollywood over the past few years, it's almost become Hollywood because of all these different surgeries available. And Britney's been quite brave to speak about it going wrong. So what do you think about when it goes wrong for celebrities?
So, as I said before, every medication that you use, be it for cosmetic reasons or for medical reasons, has risks. And what Britney is talking about are normal risks. So you can get bruising after injections. And one of the side effects of Botox is eye drooping, which is actually the most common side effect. Now, the way to minimize this risk, I would say, is once you start getting cosmetic Botox with a doctor, even if at the first experience you get one of the side effects, you should stick with him because at some point he will know exactly what to do. And unlike other treatments where there's a lot of artistry, when it comes to Botox, there's a lot of mathematics and mapping the muscles of the face. So basically, when you do cosmetic Botox, it's very good to do it with somebody who knows you very well. Now, as I've read, Britney was saying that she's replacing that with silicone patches.
Yes.
Now, those can work. There are different types. There are types that you hold for 20 minutes. There are types that you have to keep on your face for 4 to 6 hours. Now, that's a bit uncomfortable when it comes to the way I see things. But at the same time, they avoid the side effects. But obviously, the results are not long-lasting. They can last anywhere between 2 hours up to 4, 6 hours. The way they work is they basically hydrate the skin and plump the skin, and in some cases, even irritate the skin a bit. And I don't know if you've noticed in the morning, sometimes when you're a bit puffy, you have less wrinkles. They have the same effect. So I don't think this can be a replacement for Botox, but it can help people who, for example, have needle phobia. But except those treatments, we have an array of other treatments that are not, that are basically non-invasive. They don't have needles. We have different machineries with different effects. But as far as I am aware, and from my point of view, when it comes to wrinkles, the best treatment is still going to be Botox.
And of course, there are other scare stories. We covered yesterday the recreation of the Vogue
Supermodels,
cover, Linda
Evangelista. There are those horror stories as well where, you know, for celebrities such as the model Linda Evangelista, she done Botox and it actually had a really bad effect on her face to the point where she had to stop modelling. And she spoke about how it had such an adverse effect and it affected her self-confidence. Do you think it is worth for celebrities to go to that extreme in the bid for perfection?
I think we live in an age where everything is so out there. We have so many types of social media. I think we spend more time on the screen than interacting with each other. So that makes us more self-conscious about our flaws, which are not really flaws. It is what makes us human. So the answer is, it depends on how much anxiety and how much pressure you feel. What I think people should do is take a really good at themselves, create a list with the benefits and the risks, and then think to yourself, is this worth it for me? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and do it, but be aware of the risks.
And is it true that people can administer Botox without a licence?
This is a very grey area, and honestly, I don't understand it. So it seems that it is true. What you need is a doctor to prescribe the Botox if you are not a doctor, and then you can administer it. But honestly, unlike dermal fillers that are reversible, Botox is a poison that will block your muscles, and for a few months, there's nothing you can do about it. So if done wrong, it can have serious side effects. So again, this is a gray area that I do not understand exactly, but my opinion is you should always have a medical professional with very good anatomical skills.
Yes, because there's too much to risk, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I always feel glad that I'm too old for all this business.
Me too. Me, definitely too. I mean, how old is Brittany, for instance?
So Brittany, I think she's now 41 or 42.
What on earth is she doing?
And it's not like she's performing as well. You know, most of her videos are in her house just pirouetting around.
Yeah.
But again, there is that pressure for, you know, celebrities to appear youthful, and you just hear about these horrific botch jobs where it just goes all wrong, and then obviously they've got followers who are following them who are then thinking they want to look like that person.
Yeah, they become these influencers, and then it just snowballs. Yeah. Fascinating topic, though, guys. Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, up next, Stephanie's going to stick around. The doctor's off. Do stay with us for some more. This is Breakfast on GB News. No worries.
Chat away. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so. A mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today, though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today. Some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers. And that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice, though, the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature, as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest, though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day, whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers. And temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin, and with Stephanie as well, because we've got more gossip to talk about, actually.
The Green Goddess is still with us, and on the green issue, there's an argument over a tree. That man, Robbie Williams.
Robbie Williams has landed in hot water with his neighbours. So he obviously lives in a plush mansion in London. Well, Jimmy Page is his neighbour. I don't know if it's Jimmy Page who's complaining about this issue, but the two have had a previous falling out. So Robbie has a 70-foot Robina tree outside of his house, and he's planned to... he sent a planning application to the borough of Kensington and Chelsea saying that basically it's decaying at the base and he would like it cut out because it's affecting his garden wall. He last year put an application which the council rejected because they said there wasn't enough evidence of decay. But his neighbours have now got annoyed because they're saying, look, there's no reason for this. Like, Robbie keeps on axing down all the lovely trees in the neighbourhood.
He's done it before.
Yeah, he's been previously been found guilty for environmental vandalism because he tried to get rid of 14 plants. But of course, it's a big green issue in the neighbourhood.
I wonder, because I sort of sympathise with Robbie. My neighbour, if you're watching, Dev, right, my neighbour has got a tree that's completely rotted through in the middle. My lime tree also had that, and mine was condemned and had to be cut down.
Yes, because that could be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Could go over in a storm. I had to apply for a tree surgeon, gave it, basically condemned it. And when a tree is officially condemned, then you can give it the chop.
Yeah.
So I wonder if Robbie's trying on, because if a tree is dangerous,
well,
then there's a legitimate reason to fell it.
Well, that's what he's saying, because if it's disease, he's saying it might break or it might fall as well. But his issue is because where he lives is being protected by the tree preservation order. So that means that it cannot be cut down, uprooted or damaged without the local authorities' written consent.
Yeah.
So they've already denied him before. So he's come back a year later. So clearly it is an issue. But he's got green-friendly neighbours who want that tree kept.
Now, anybody out there who knows about the TPO, the Tree Preservation Order, they officially means that the tree is logged as a tree of special protection.
Yes.
You can have them felled, but it's difficult. And they have to be inspected. He can afford the inspection.
Yeah.
But these are the sort of things that neighbours do fall out about.
But I've seen a picture of it. It is an enormous tree.
Very big.
And you can only suspect as well, it looks as though it probably casts shadow over his entire garden.
Well, that's why he tried to get rid of also 14. He tried to prune 14 plants in his garden because he's saying he can't have the view of Holland Park from his mansion as well. but clearly his neighbours are viewing it differently and do feel like these should be protected. Because if you think about Kensington, it's quite an area of conservation. So,
Yes.
you know, for neighbours who want that stuff there...
But if you've got a tree that's shading your entire garden,
You can sort of
doesn't
see it.
move house, I suppose, but you can... Yes, I mean, I would have thought, couldn't they negotiate and just trim it back a bit or something?
But the thing is, people get incredibly territorial about trees. I mean, my dad is the same. My dad loves chopping down. He's probably watching now, Bob the Chopper. You know, he's always out chopping down trees. He does it for fun. But people fall out all the time about this sort of stuff.
You do see the difference when a tree's been chopped off. I remember one day I was walking up my road, like 5 trees had been chopped off, and it made the road look completely different. And you just get used to seeing them.
I mean, well, I think we all agree they're wonderful things, but one man's tree looking beautiful in his garden is another man's shadow, and it can be a real problem.
Well,
so where is he at?
All I can say, well, basically, they've objected. A lot of his neighbours are putting through complaints to the council, so the council have yet to decide, but they did deny him last year. So if he can actually prove that there's been more decay in this tree, then they would have to chop it.
And I bet you out there in GB News land, I bet you there are viewers that are saying, I see where he's coming from. Let us know if you've had any tree wars, because people fall out all the time about trees.
They chop them down in the middle of the night and then nothing can be done.
They poison them sometimes.
No. Oh, really?
They can poison... I've got to make... you can poison trees. Oh, look, that tree's there. Oh, we better chop it down because they've been and given it on the sly. You know, things go like that.
That
things
won't
go wrong.
go well with tree huggers, because they say trees give a lot of good endorphins and they're supposed to be respected, good energy.
I always think that's what's wonderful about trees, particularly big old ones, is what they've seen.
Yes.
How life has changed around them while they've been growing. I just think trees are amazing, wonderful things.
What was really interesting was this guy was going down my street. I was outside trimming my hedge, and he stopped. And he said to me, "Would you mind if I came through into your garden?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He went, "I grew up in this house. Have you still got the tree with the wall built?" And I said, "Yes, we have." He went, "My dad built that wall." And I got him in through my house. And he said, "Yeah, my dad built that wall." And it was really moving. That he had this bond with this tree, which, by the way, I ended up chopping down.
Oh, no!
I did. Because it got this fungus disease that now a neighbour's tree has got. The trunk went completely hollow and it was swaying about like Billy O in the wind, and it had to go. But trees can bring us together and they can be wonderful emotional things.
Oh, they are. They're wonderful things. Tree stories. If you've got a lovely tree story, please tell us about it. gbviews@gbnews.com. Stephanie, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you so much, guys.
We'll be back in a couple of moments looking through the papers.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Vickery, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here with Anne and Martin. Shall we have a look and see what's in today's newspapers? I think we.
No, we haven't got them.
No, we're not. We're not
Straight
doing the
against.
headlines. We'll go straight into the stories. We've got Emma Wolf with us and James Woodhousen. Thank you very much for coming back, Emma. This is a good story you found in the Mail about people who don't leave good enough tips at restaurants.
Well, apparently, these chic Saint-Tropez restaurants are blacklisting some British tourists over their failure to stump up really big tips. It's basically the Super Swish bistros in Saint-Tropez, and they're making, and they've always done this. I think bar owners and bistro and restaurant owners at the top places, they have their list of their favourite clients, they have their list of their favourite customers. But what they're doing is they're compiling these sneaky databases showing which diners are spending the most, but also which diners aren't leaving really lovely, big, chunky American-style tips. And actually, it's illegal in France. They shouldn't be doing this because there's already the 15% service charge, which is added to the bill automatically. So the mayor of Saint-Tropez is saying, Saint-Tropez mayor Sylvie Cyr is saying this is illegal practice and it must cease immediately. Shouldn't be blacklisting people for not paying enough.
I've always had a problem with things like this because as a Brit, I'm not naturally a tipper. Tipping is something that was kind of foisted upon me when I first started going to America, particularly Las Vegas, where I spent way too long. And you're tipping because, you have to tip. But this kind of thing, it's like, they probably already get paid a stack. Now, everyone that goes there is minted. And the idea of, like, shaming people because they don't tip high enough, I just think, who do you think you are?
Well, it's true, and you'll get a salty answer in New York City if you don't tip a cabbie. There's no doubt of that. But I think, we've got to be realistic about this, not just in America. Restaurants have favoured tables, favoured people, film stars. This is human nature, and it's not going to go away no matter what the mayor says.
But a tip should be earned.
I think a tip should be earned, but I've worked in New York, I've worked in America as, lowly kind of, those difficult jobs like waitressing where you do rely on the tip. You take home $100 at the end of the day, that's your tip. You're paid almost nothing. So I think in America it is part of the culture. Here, not so much. But this whole Saint-Tropez thing, it's really about who's spending a lot, who's spending 55 quid on their borlotti beans and saddle of lamb, 80 pounds on their lobster, puddings for 22 pounds. So it's who's spending a lot. They don't want to bother with people who come in for a coffee.
So they don't really want tourists, do they? They want the local very rich people,
or the local, or the tourists, but who are celebrities who earn a lot of money. I think who are willing to spend a lot.
It must be said that hospitality is a long hours, labour-intensive, hot, sweaty, tough, and often rude, from punters, industry. So tips, let's not knock them.
The waiters and waitresses are not paid a lot. Whereas, of course, these restaurants are raking it in. I agree with you, Martin. But the sort of actual waiting staff are not going to be paid a huge amount. Certainly not the kitchen staff.
And I never know whether you should add it onto your bill.
Exactly, it's a real racket.
Pay it by machine.
Do they then get the money if you don't leave the It's a difficult one. Same with your hairdresser. Same with everything. How do you what's the best way to do it?
But I sort of walk into pubs now and you pay by card and it says gratuity, yes or no. So all you've done is that.
What I get amazed is the supermarket asking you pay £1.20 and they say, would you like to add 80 pence for a local charity?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to double my bill. I mean, I'd love to, I will donate to charity when I want to, but offering you the option.
Yeah, £1 for Ukraine, no.
Well, it's,
you're bombarded all the time. Anyway, I'm being a bit mean-spirited today. Let's move on. James, the banking crisis story rolls on. This time, what's this? Dodgy comments about an Arab?
Well, not just an Arab. The deliciously named Sir Sherard Cowper Coles, and I've got to show your viewers just how civil service he looks. I mean, straight out of Westminster. He, just a few days ago, he was saying how we ought to be nice to Huawei, the Chinese telecoms company, and that to be nasty to them was to follow America into the abyss. Now he's come out and said that the Arab mind is empty compared with the Chinese mind. Well, it's pretty insulting, and it also reveals that he knows nothing about Arab science. Edmund Halley, of Halley's Comet fame, really admired the conquest that Arabs had made through Islamic astronomy in helping him do his work. And, Syrians and Libyans...
What was the context then of this comment? Why did he make this comment?
Because if you're, off the cuff, Chatham House rules among people people like us, you tend to say silly things. And that's what he did.
Or racist things.
Yeah. And, it's very foolish. If you look at Islamic calligraphy, I'm no fan of Islam, and I'm really no fan of Islamism. But when they made scientific, aesthetic, literary accomplishments, all credit to them. They're human beings.
Talking about something else that gets us divided, Emma. Let's move on to... We had this conversation, didn't we, a couple of days ago about is it time to forgive Prince Harry because he was left off the military announcements for the honours, but apparently the public aren't in charitable mood.
They're not really. Around 52% are saying that they would support Harry being removed. And he's currently fifth in line.
Brexit again.
Yeah, there we go. Well, no, 27% said that they were opposed to the idea of Harry being stripped of his role in it. So he's fifth in line. He's behind William and then the three children, George, Charlotte and Louis. And 52% of the population, or the people surveyed anyway, it was a poll of 1,500 people, say that he should be removed from the order of succession so that he wouldn't become king in 5 succession's time, as it were.
It is pretty extraordinary. I mean, I'm fifth in line.
He left this country.
There would have to be a lot of accidents to happen, sadly, for him to ever be offered the post of king. But he's a non-working royal.
He's a non-working royal, and I think the fact that he decided, it's not as though... he's made public statements saying he doesn't want to be part of the royal family. He left this country, which isn't in itself, but he left the country, doesn't want to be part of the firm, published his memoir. He's really made it quite clear, along with his sidekick, that he does not want to be part of this institution of ours. And I think that's where this response comes from.
Yes, it's odd that his place as fifth in line is still there.
He would like to govern a country even though he doesn't really want to be part of the royal family. It's sort of...
what's known as cakeism, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. You'd have to do it from Montecito, wouldn't he? OK, James, students can't cope with university.
Well, I'm as ready as any university professor to criticise students for, not coming up to par and not working hard enough, and I'm tough on them because it's the best way to get them along. However, in this case, what's happened is that the students who are arbitrarily marked by teachers with their A-levels, marked upwards generally, get to university and then can't cope. And although I'm, critical of indulging the youth, I have to say that that whole episode when the National Education Union and the government conspired to prevent children and adolescents going to university and going to school through the lockdowns was an absolute disgrace, and we're still paying the price for it. So in this case, I'm reasonably sympathetic to people who were given 3 straight A's, actually were dunces. They get to university and they can't cope.
Yeah, because they're saying here this has led to a 30% increase in dropout rates because they're basically marked up, but when they get there, they can't make the grade.
Well, that's it. You know, it's doing nobody any favours to stroke them and tell them that they're great, and it's doing nobody any favours, especially the parents as well, to lock them down.
And it's getting them into big debt.
It is, but I'd say it's more than just the fact that it was teacher assessment throughout the pandemic and that it was during lockdown. I think it's probably that tragedy of keeping, you know, young people out of schools and colleges has had incalculable damage, and they're arriving at university probably after 3 years of this lockdown. OK, we're all recovering, but they were young people. Imagine you've gone from 14 to 17, or you've gone from 10 to 13. It's formative years of your life when you didn't have social contact. You're pretty much, you know, in your bedroom. There's just so much damage was done by lockdown that I think we're seeing this kind of fallout, where people do arrive at university with possibly, you know, unrealistic expectations.
And let's not forget, Matt Hancock wants more and better and stronger lockdowns. So the feeling is still out there that we can escape this episode and ignore it instead of paying attention
I always
to
wonder what
Emma
would
is
have
saying.
happened had we not locked down. I mean, we would have seen deaths, wouldn't we? Would we have seen it in that age group? What would have happened?
But what would have been wrong, and I know we don't want to replay all this, but what would have been wrong with protecting the vulnerable and letting the rest of us get on with it?
Well, that's what
Flu runs rampant. Lots of us would have been able to cope just fine, and lots of us had COVID and coped just fine.
Well, they did that in countries like Sweden. They did it in states like Florida and Texas, and, you know, the outcomes were relatively similar. Let's move on from COVID. It's a bit of a downer, and let's get on to something that really cheers us all up. Emma, the correct pronunciation of the thing you put clotted cream.
Yeah, you can't say
on.
it. You can't say it.
I want to say it because
so
I know
60% of people responding to this survey said that S-C-O-N-E, that you put clotted cream and jam on, should be pronounced to rhyme with scone.
Scone.
So it should be pronounced scone.
Yes, I say scone.
Do you?
I do.
Oh, only 40% say scone, which is clearly the correct pronunciation.
I say scone.
Scone.
And what's really interesting about this is the regionality. Where you come from dictates how you say it. And I'm on point because if you're from the Midlands, like me, you say scone.
I thought scone was a posh way of saying it.
So did I.
I thought it would be a more southern thing to be saying.
Yeah,
but actually, the scone pronunciation. But what I also like is that clotted cream sales have surged 300% and jam sales have surged 40% during the coronation. Everyone was having lots of scones.
Yes.
And cream and scones.
And the scone is typically from the north and Scotland, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that'll be why I say
North
scone,
of England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, while people living in the rest of Britain, well, they use a mix of both.
But I always thought, as you said, that posh people said scone.
Scone.
And that's why I say scone.
Scone.
Because I'm rough as you like.
But also, then we get into the debate of do you put the cream on first or the jam on first?
Oh, yes.
Clearly, the cream goes on first and then a dollop of jam on top,
Well, these are elemental issues on a Sunday morning.
They're absolutely important. I was just looking for a story. I know that if you go to Highgrove for an afternoon out, you get scones and clotted cream and all the rest of it.
And which do they put on first?
It costs a bomb, apparently.
Well, for me, it has to be the clotted cream first because simple physics. Because jam will adhere to cream, whereas if you put jam on, then you never ever get the cream to stick to jam. It just
That's not true.
It wipes all the jam off.
Why would you put the cream? But yeah,
no, you put the jam on first.
To me, the cream is like butter, which you would put first onto toast, and then you would put the jam on. So the cream does that.
Yeah.
It depends on the quality of
the great merit of it is it's all three-dimensional. You know, the more greedy you are, the more you can kind of stack it up.
It becomes a tower.
Yes, if it's squirty cream, you see, you'd put that on second.
But that would not be posh.
Squirty cream is...
It's not
squirty cream.
Isn't posh.
Heresy.
Sorry about that. Yes, it does depend on the quality of the cream. But if you've got a view, then let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Have we got time for one more? I don't know. I don't think we have we? No, we haven't.
I don't think we have.
Anyway, no, let us know what your tendency is for scones or scones and what you put on them and in what order. We'd love to know.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, thank you very much to both of you. We'll see you again in an hour. We've got lots more to come, including celebrating England's Lionesses, who've done so well, but they're up against the Matildas.
They are.
Aren't they?
They are.
Now.
Down under. In Sydney, home game for the Matildas.
Join us again after the news.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so, a mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today, some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers, and that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice though the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature, as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day, whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers, and temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Sunday the 13th of August. Today, another tragedy in the Channel. The government is under further pressure now to tackle the crisis of migrant crossings. 6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France.
And in sports, England's Lionesses have roared onto the World Cup semi-final, but can our girls make it all the way? We'll have the latest with Aidan McGee because they face the Matildas down under in Sydney.
Meanwhile, August holiday sales are booming as people are trying to get away from the typical UK weather. Apparently, Spain and Greece are turning out to be the most popular destinations. Are you booking your next getaway?
And of course, the big question is, how will the weather look today? Well, here's Marco Patagna from the Met Office.
We've got another day of sunshine and showers across the UK. Some of the showers could be on the heavy side. I'll have more details, though, later.
Let's hope it turns out well for you. A very good morning. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
A while ago, I was asking you for your tree stories. People feel very strongly about trees. We were talking about it because Robbie Williams is in trouble with his neighbours. He wants to cut down the big, very big tree in his garden,
yep.
And a lot of his neighbours don't want him to. It's interesting, though. I was talking about that I love trees, particularly when they're big and old, because I always think, what have they seen through their years? Alison in Aberdeen has been in touch. Hi, Alison. She said, Anne, you were saying that old trees must have some stories to tell. We visited one of the oldest trees in the UK last week when we were away. It's the yew tree at Fortinghall in Perthshire, and it's estimated to be 5,000 years old. But that one's got a few stories to tell.
Yeah, and as a Nottingham lad, I remember we went on a school trip to the Major Oak when I was a very young lad in Sherwood Forest. And, you know, that tree, because we've been told it's where, like, Robin Hood hung out, it may have been a bit of a myth.
Well.
But it nevertheless was a tree that brought history alive. And, you know, I always cherished that tree. It was very, very sad when it was vandalised. I think it was chopped down in the end.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Christine says, my mum loved trees. Her name was Teresa. And I scattered her ashes under the tree on the green outside my house. Her ashes would now be absorbed into the tree. And in this way, my mum lives on. And when I pass the tree, I always say, hello, Mum. Am I daft?
No, you're not
No,
daft.
you're not daft. I think that's absolutely lovely.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful story. And isn't that just a great way of, like, showing how you can have a genuine physical connection?
Yeah.
The thought of those carbon atoms going through, I think that's magical. That's lovely.
Gosh. Deborah in Milton Keynes. My husband wouldn't cut a 60-foot tree down in our garden, which was blocking the light to all our neighbours. So after 5 years of asking, I waited till he went to work and I got a man in. 2 hours later, no tree.
And Jeff comes with a good point of law before we get too excited about getting the chainsaw out. Jeff says you cannot cut down trees between March and September if birds are nesting in them. That's the law.
Yeah.
Good point.
Gary in Canterbury says, regarding Robbie Williams' tree, they were there when he bought the property and probably have been there for decades. Another rich celebrity thinks doing what they like is right. Leave the old trees alone.
Yeah, fair point. And it's certainly ruffled a few feathers in Robbie's manor. And it certainly has out there in GB Newsland. Thanks for your input.
Yes, thank you. Any more tree stories? Keep them coming. To our top story today, the government is under further pressure to tackle migrant crossings after yet another tragedy in the Channel.
Yeah, 6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France yesterday, with a further 59 people being rescued by British and French coastguards.
Well, joining us now is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. And a very good morning to you, Olivia. This is not just a tragedy, it's actually becoming a bit of a political ping-pong now. Everybody is waving around, blaming others.
Well, it absolutely is. It's becoming a real political hot potato. And Rishi Sunak has said ever since he took office this time last year that one of his top priorities, one of those 5 priorities he talks about all the time, is to stop the migrants crossing the channel in small boats. Well, it doesn't look on the face of it like he's done a particularly good job of that. Last week, we crossed the threshold of 100,000 migrants having crossed the channel since 2018. And on Thursday, we broke another record. 755 migrants on just one day crossed the channel in small boats. It is becoming a real nightmare for the government. And the issue is, what do we do with them once they get here? Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, is very, very keen that wherever they go, it is a disincentive for migrants to come. At the moment, taxpayers are spending £6 million a day on putting up migrants in hotels, and the Home Secretary worries that it essentially encourages people to come over here. Pretty nice life living in a 4-star hotel in Pimlico in some cases. So obviously the government is looking into other places to house these migrants, but there is already a backlog of 170,000 waiting for accommodation, and they are coming over by the boatload every day. So of course we've got the Bibi Stockholm, although we know there are now problems with that because of a bacteria found on that. Migrants have had to evacuate. They are now looking, ministers, into other boats, barges like the Bibi Stockholm, but there is a problem with ports not wanting to berth lots and lots of ships. They're looking into student accommodation for migrants, but again, there are problems there. Plenty of campuses are already completely full. There is a big lack of accommodation even for students. So that's not a particularly easy solution. Perhaps the best solution for ministers is using old RAF headquarters, using old barracks for housing migrants, but there simply aren't enough of them to deal with this backlog of 170,000 plus all of the migrants who are coming in every single day. So this is turning into a real nightmare for the government, and it's very tricky for Rishi Sunak when he has kept saying over and over again that tackling this crisis is one of his top priorities and that he wants to be judged on delivering on it.
Fascinating to look at the political fallout this morning, Olivia. The Daily Mail are blaming the French because 2 boats escorted this flimsy craft out and it got into trouble. The theory is, well, why weren't they escorted back ashore? The political game, Ian Duncan Smith is doubling down on that, saying these French escorts were madness that offered the veneer of security. Marco Longhi, he's the MP for Dudley Conservative. This terrible tragedy should be a wake-up call to Keir Starmer's Labour and the whole of the left, that this is what happens when you oppose our sensible measures to tackle the small boat crisis. Stephen Kinnock today in the Sunday Mirror sheds a bit of light on what Labour would offer to do. And apparently, Olivia, he's saying that the Labour Party would look at doing a fresh deal with the European Union to help do this. That might raise a few eyebrows.
Yes, so every time Keir Starmer gets asked about this, he says that his main policy in this area is to reach a new kind of agreement with the French or with the European Union to stop the problem upstream. Well, of course, that is easier said than done. This year and last year, the current government, the Conservative government, have plugged a lot of money into trying to help the French deal with the problem on their own shores. So there are now British policemen patrolling on French shores. There are British policemen in watchtowers on French shores, and the French police have been given lots and lots of money by the British. So this solution sort of has been attempted, but as we've seen from the tragedy yesterday, it doesn't necessarily work. There is just too much for the French to be doing, and the incentives for the French simply aren't there. The French don't have the space to house all of these migrants, and even if, according to the Dublin Agreement, migrants should be staying in the first safe country they arrive in, therefore France, there is no incentive for the French to keep them there. It's useful for them to get them off French shores. So it's a really, really tricky problem, and Keir Starmer's solution, to many, seems a bit too simple.
I said at the beginning, everybody's trying to blame everybody else because this seems to be a problem that has no solution.
It does feel a little bit like a problem that has no solution. One tactic that Rishi Sunak has been trying this year is to make deal agreements with individual countries where there are a high number of migrants coming over from. So, for example, a few months ago, he made a deal with the Albanian Prime Minister. Albanians were responsible for 90% of the traffic coming over the Channel. And the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, agreed this deal with Albania, where Albanian migrants can be sent back very, very quickly, very easily, without their claims having to be processed in the usual long, laborious fashion. Well, that has worked in that there are now far, far fewer Albanian migrants coming over the Channel. But the issue for Rishi Sunak is this is a real many-headed hydra. There is essentially an endless flow of people wanting to come to Britain. So, great, you managed to stop the flow of Albanians coming over, but we are now seeing a huge, huge number of Afghans, which we saw yesterday. Really, really sadly, we saw 6 Afghan men die on the Channel yesterday, and Turkish. Rishi Sunak is now attempting to make a deal with the Turkish, but you can imagine how this will go. Solve one problem and another just crops up.
So, Olivia, you're in Leamington Spa today, is that right? And it's the People's...
I am in Leamington Spa
and you're doing the People's panel. It's going to be very, very interesting for you to find out what people are saying about this topic, because it's been the #1 news issue of the week. It's meant to be the Tories on a front foot. The Bibi Stockholm, that's the only boat they've managed to stop. And then the deal with Turkey, £3 million, £500 million, £500 million going to France, seems to be completely ineffective if they're escorting boats offshore. And then just 4 miles off of France, the British services go in and bring them back to Dover. What are people saying to you politically about this topic? It's going to be a massive topic for the next general election, isn't it?
It is absolutely going to be a huge topic. Poll after poll shows that the Channel crisis is top of people's priority list over and over again. People want a government who will fix this crisis. The issue is, at the moment, the polling shows, and this has been echoed by people I've been talking to, neither Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer is trusted on this issue. It's felt by many that Rishi Sunak is sort of doing his best, but it simply isn't enough. And as you say, a lot of taxpayer money is going on his schemes to try and make a difference, but the numbers show that very little difference is being made. 100,000 migrants over here since 2018. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, as I said there, the central tenet of his policy is to stop the problem upstream by having a deal with the French, which is much easier said than done. So it doesn't really feel as though he's trusted very much on this issue either. But it'll be really interesting to see whether over the next few months, in that long lead up to the general election, one of the two parties will manage to make a bit of headway. Because I think if headway is made on this particular issue, that party could be doing very well indeed.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on Camilla Tominey's show a bit later on this morning. Thank you.
It just feels like, as you said, it feels like a problem without a solution. Or at least we have political parties that don't have a solution or any decent ideas. Everything they try is just failing.
Yeah, and what's the betting? I'd put good money on the fact that the Bibi Stockholm will never, ever be occupied now.
Yeah, it just seems to me like it was going to be stopped by hook or by crook.
Yeah, and it was by Legionella.
Yeah.
And you could have... We haven't heard anything about Legionnaire's disease for years and years. Suddenly it crops up on the Bibi Stockholm.
And it's worth pointing out that nobody came down with any form of illness. It was a precautionary measure. It's like, well, blow me down. They stopped one boat. That's the only boat they stopped.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. 12 minutes past 8. Sports news now, and some really good news as well, Aidan, isn't it?
Yes.
Brilliant how the Lionesses are doing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they pulled it off yesterday. They were losing, actually, and quite early on in the game. Colombia, we shouldn't have written them off, really. They knocked out Germany in the group stage. But, yeah, goals by Alessia Russo, who got the winning goal, and Lauren Hemp got the equaliser just before half-time.
And it's fair to be saying, Mystic McGee, you called this one right, and I said I'd put a few quid on, and I blooming well forgot.
We've got the video now, actually, to prove that I made this prediction right. I think we can probably see it now if we've got it.
Do you think the score's going to be?
I think it's going to be 2-1 to England. I can see Colombia scoring because they're quite adventurous going forward, but I think England will have too much, even without Lauren James.
even though that video could have been faked, that was...
It wasn't. It was published on Twitter yesterday.
That was Steph's pink dress from yesterday. Today she was resplendent as the Green Goddess.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
you also said it right. You said it live on air. You called it right 2-1. But anyway, the...
You regret putting some money on now.
Yeah,
though. Not putting some money on.
But I hear. I mean, I didn't watch it either, I'm afraid. But I hear that it was all in the last few minutes. It was absolutely magic.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, you need to understand when the later you get into the tournament, the tougher the opponent gets. What we've seen in this tournament as well is that the gap between the established nations like the US and Brazil, Canada, and England, of course, between the so-called lesser nations, the ones who haven't been playing for quite as long, has narrowed. Certainly, we're not seeing big thrashings anymore. We're seeing teams like Colombia get to the quarter-finals. We're seeing, I mean, the USA are out, Germany are out, Brazil are out, Canada are out, Ireland are out. All the top sides have not really laid a glove on anybody in this tournament. So I would expect now, tough assignment against Australia on Wednesday. They are the host nation. To be fair to Emma Hayes, the Chelsea manager, she predicted before the tournament that Australia would be strong.
And they'll be able to prove something against the Poms on home turf.
Well, they will, exactly. And Sam Kerr who plays for Chelsea. She's playing for Australia as well, so she'll be a real threat in the opposition ranks. But all eyes on that game now. But if they get through that, I mean, I think England are favourites already, so there is pressure.
Oh, are they favourites?
Without doubt, yeah. I mean, look, they went down there as European champions, so there was no inferiority complex there whatsoever. I think, especially with Lauren James coming back potentially for the final, if England get through there, I think England will win.
But they'll face the victors in the other semi of Spain versus Sweden. Spain look quite tasty, though.
They do. They're scoring a lot of goals, and so that would be a concern for England. Although England, look at, I mean, all right, they conceded the goal yesterday. They won against China. They conceded. I mean, I think it's 2 goals they conceded in 5 games now. That's really impressive, and that's if you're going to win. Tournament football is about keeping it tight at the back as much as it is going forward. So, as I say, I expect England to win this tournament. And if they then become European champions and world champions, goodness me, there's no better accolade than that.
There's a nice picture on the front page of one of the papers. Is it the Mail there?
Yeah.
No, it's not that one. Lovely one of our goal scorer, wasn't it?
Yes.
She was comforting one of the Colombians who was terribly upset.
That's right.
She was consoling one of the...
It's a lovely picture. I can't find it now.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah.
But it's been played in great spirits, and look, the girls once again are showing the boys how to win.
No.
Back to the Premier League, that kicked off yesterday. My team, Forest, lost to Arsenal.
They could account themselves, Martin, to be fair.
Did all right.
Did all right, yeah. I mean, they made it hairy for Arsenal towards the end, but this is a side that spent a lot of money in the summer, Arsenal. They were expected to kick off well. Full house at the Emirates, as you would expect. Slight delay, actually. Half an hour delay getting in because of the e-ticketing problem they've had. I mean, that's like, you think about 60,000 people milling around North London, and when they can't get into the ground, that was a real problem. Wins for Newcastle, 5-1 against Aston Villa. Everton losing at home to Fulham, 1-0. We should mention Harry Kane's debut for Bayern Munich as well. All that fuss about him they rushed to get his registration done before 2 o'clock yesterday, and so he could play in the Super Cup last night.
Yeah.
He comes on in the 64th minute, and Bayern Munich never lose, basically, and they lost 3-0.
No!
Is it the curse of Kane?
Well, it's funny because all those years they said, does Harry Kane need to leave Tottenham to win trophies? And now after 25 minutes on the pitch, people are saying, does Harry Kane need to leave Bayern Munich to win trophies?
yeah, he came on as a bit of a curse. I
know.
Luton Town in the Premier League, freshly promoted, they got tonked.
They did indeed. I mean, their first, I think, Deeply Dippy by Right Said Fred was #1 last time they played in the top division of English football back in May 1992. Yeah, beaten 4-1, but again, they did all right. They got it back to 2-1 with quite late in the game. Anne's friend Nico, I mean, I'm sure he would have been watching quite closely. Yeah, but listen, it's a long season. That's a tough trip. Brighton are an established Premier League side. They got promoted 6 years ago. Luton still finding their way. Every decent Premier League manager will say to you, if you're in that bottom half of the league at the start of the season, and you look at the fixture list and you think, where are we going to get 10 wins from? 10 wins plus 6 draws, 36 points should be enough to keep you up. It's 1 game to go. There's no need to panic.
And in the boxing, quickly, finally some good news for Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, I mean, I felt, look, he was a stand-in opponent. I'm not sure it's the best possible preparation you can get for facing Deontay Wilder in January, if that's what's going to happen. But he seems to... It's almost like someone said to him, look, can you drag it out a little bit just so that the fans get their money's worth? But he knocked him down in the 7th, his first stoppage in 2.5 years. Booze, though, in the 3rd round. Anthony's still got quite a bit of a way to get back to where he was. And as I say, it's not his fault because the original opponent... Dillian White returned an adverse analytical finding, which in layman's terms is failing a voluntary drugs test. So it's not his fault that he faced a substandard opponent yesterday, but you can only beat what's in front of you. And if it does go down to January, he's going to need some serious training to get up to that level.
And his opponent called himself the Nordic Nightmare, as you told me yesterday, but he had an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, he's not.
He was just thrown in front of him to please the crowd, so they had a show of any form.
Well, he lost to Wilder recently as well. I mean, he's not a nightmare to anyone who's any good, to be honest with you. But look, they had to get someone otherwise, because it's not just the headline fight, it's also a whole undercard below that, and they had to get it on.
And I'm kicking myself.
OK, Aidan, thanks very much indeed.
Good to see you.
Let's catch up with the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so, a mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today, though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today, some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers, and that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice, though, the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature, as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest, though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day. Whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers. And temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, that's your weather for you. Not too bad, eh? But I wonder what it's going to be like on the channel and whether it's going to be smooth as a mill pond again, which will just get more channel crossings going.
Yeah.
Talking about immigration, yes, we've got some big views on it. Mandy in Nottingham says we need a complete stop on any immigration to give us a chance to catch up on the people we're currently trying to deal with in our country. Clear the backlog whilst working to put together a better and more efficient system.
And Harry is echoing a lot of the sentiment around today, so in the Daily Mail, about blaming the French because the two warships escorted this vessel into water rather than turning it around. Harry says stopping the migrant boats is proving impossible, so how about stopping French fishing boats from using UK waters to fish in? Let's see how Macron deals with that.
Oh dear, Gordon in Northumberland says, why can't we just admit it and accept the fact that the French are punishing us for Brexit? They are laughing at us.
True.
Well, coming up in the next few minutes, we've got the Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. It'll be interesting to see what she says about Labour's view on the migrant crossings. So stick around. This is GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle. Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant the Big Green, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Anne and Martin.
Yeah, now returning to our top story today, 6 people died after a small boat sank in the channel off the French coast yesterday, and the government is under further pressure to tackle the migrant crisis.
Well, joining us now is Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. A very good morning to you. I know you wanted to talk about education matters, but first we obviously have to talk to you about the channel tragedies and what can be done to stop them. What's your viewpoint?
As you say, what we've seen is an absolute tragedy. It's heartbreaking to see people losing their lives in this way. I think what is essential is that we see action to crack down on the criminal gangs that are exploiting people and are driving so much of this misery. Under the Conservatives, we've seen a fall in the number of convictions of these people smugglers, and that needs to change. We also need to make sure that we're dealing with the backlog that we're facing at the moment. We're not processing cases quickly. That's leading to that backlog, and it's meaning that all too often people are being housed in completely unsuitable accommodation like hotels.
Well, Bridget, your Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock's done a very interesting piece in today's Sunday Mirror where he seems to flash his garter a bit about what Labour would plan to do. And one of those things, he said, is a new returns deal with the European Union. Kevin Saunders, who works for Border Force, told us earlier that's about as likely as plaiting fog. And another thing he mentions here is to ensure genuine refugees can contribute to Britain, which I'm assuming means quicker access to work visas. So cozying up to the EU and guaranteeing more cheap labour for Britain. This sounds like a backdoor Brexit.
No, we do need a returns agreement. That's part of the problem that we've got at the moment, that we don't. So we absolutely need to negotiate that deal and get a deal around returns. Where it comes to decisions being taken, people are waiting a very, very long time at the moment for decisions to be taken where it comes to asylum claims. Now, for those who have a genuine case to remain in the UK, that's unfair because we should be processing those cases quickly. Many have been through incredible trauma and terrible events in their lives. And for those who don't have a right to be here, we need decisions quickly so that we can make sure that people people are returned to their home country or to the third country from which they may have come. So it's all about having a fairer system that deals with cases quickly. I've seen lots of cases as a Member of Parliament where you're talking about people waiting years even to get an interview, to have their case heard and to have it dealt with. I think that is just not sustainable.
Bridget, I just want to push you on that point. You've made it clear that fast-tracking the asylum process is a policy. I want to push you on this point, though. Ensuring genuine refugees can contribute to Britain, that means work visas for asylum seekers, doesn't it? Is that something you'd support?
Well, once people have had their case determined and it's clear that they have a right to be in this country, then yes, they will have the opportunity to work and to play a full part in our society. Many people who've been through that process have got a lot of skills and a lot that they could offer our country. At the moment, they're languishing in hotels, in unsuitable accommodation, and it's years, it's costing us all a fortune as a country because of the government's total failure to process cases quickly and effectively. It's not fair for those people who are waiting for cases to be heard, and it's not fair for the rest of the country either.
I think there's no doubt, is there, that this is going to be a very big election issue. So when are we going to hear exactly what Labour would do, which would actually sound convincing?
Well, if we win the next election, if the British people put their trust in us, we'll inherit a completely broken asylum and immigration system. Everything that we're talking about now is down to 13 years of complete failure from the government to actually deal with any of this. Labour's plan is making sure that we are tackling the criminal gangs that are exploiting people, that we get a cross-border policing unit to do that, that we do get returns to the European Union, to France and other countries, and also that we do move away from ending hotel use, which is costing millions of pounds every day, and dealing with the backlog of cases that we've got at the moment. We've got a huge backlog, cases are not being processed, and that isn't sustainable.
But Bridget, a returns deal with the EU, as I explained, we spoke to a former chief of Border Force who just says that simply won't work. There's no incentive for the European Union to take these people back. They've done nothing to stop them leaving. We've spent £500 million, £500 million with the French, and yet yesterday still happened, and no doubt more disasters will continue to happen. So I put it to you again. What's a Labour going to do to actually stop the boats arriving in the first place?
The only answer has to be more effective working with our international partners, and that includes the French. That's why we've said we would end the unworkable and unethical Rwanda scheme, and we would put the money that was saved from that into delivering a cross-border policing unit to make sure that we are working effectively with our international partners, but also that we're cracking down on the criminal gangs that do exploit people. And, we see the direct consequence of those gangs and the tragedies that we see in the Channel. Under this government, prosecutions have fallen. I mean, crime is, prosecutions of all crime right across our country have fallen, but that also applies to the criminal gangs who are making money out of human misery, and they are running rings around this government.
OK, well, you're also here to talk about education this morning, of course, and the all-important issue of excessive spending on supply teachers due to recruitment gaps. Now, my missus is a teacher. She says quite a lot of teachers are going to the supply side of things because they're demoralised, they're fed up of the profession, and they find that being a supply teacher works quite well for them because they get paid more, and yet they don't have all the politics or the homework. So is this something that's a viable solution? How much would it cost?
Absolutely. The experience that you're just describing there is what I hear the length and breadth of the country, that teachers are increasingly feeling demoralised, undervalued, not appreciated for what they're doing, and that workload pressures are driving lots and lots of teachers out of the profession. We have to re-establish teaching as a really valued and respected profession in our country. And Labour's plans would deliver more teachers into our classrooms. We would end the tax breaks that private schools enjoy and put that money into recruiting more teachers. But alongside that, all of the different incentive payments and bursaries that are currently available, we want to simplify that to make it more effective in keeping teachers in the classroom. But also at the end of 2 years, when teachers have done their early career framework, where they've done extra training and have invested in their professionalism, we want to recognise that with an extra payment at the end of that too. But we do need to deal with some of the wider challenges in our schools too, and I think young people's mental health and some of those wider pressures in society are part of that bigger picture that means that lots of teachers feel it's just they can't stay within teaching, and I want to make teaching a really attractive place for people to work once more.
Yes, teaching. I mean, we need teachers, and you're planning to recruit an additional 6,500 teachers. How will you, though, change that morale completely? How will you incentivise young people coming out of university into teaching?
Well, education will be a really big priority for the next Labour government if we win that election. And I want to make sure that teachers are valued and respected. What I hear across the country when I've spoken to lots of teachers and school leaders is that often they've felt belittled by this government, that they don't feel they've been treated with respect. But alongside that too, that they're being asked to deal with lots of wider problems within society, and they're just not able to do that. So we would put extra support into our schools around mental health. Lots of young people are struggling with that at the moment. And in our primary schools, we would deliver breakfast clubs for every primary school child in England. So making sure that children get a really good start to the day. But also we know that the evidence backs up the fact that where breakfast clubs are effective is actually also in driving up attendance and leading to better academic outcomes for children too. So all of that together, dealing with the workload pressures, making sure that teachers are respected and valued, and actually putting education right at the heart of national life once more. I think all of that, and there'll be much more besides it, will mark a real step change in how we approach things from government.
Well, education, education, education. It sounds like Tony Blair all over again. And of course, he was recently on stage with your man Keir Starmer. All sounds great on paper. The big difference this time, of course, is you've got no money. You've got to inherit a £2.6 trillion national debt. At least Blair had a few quid in the coffers. These plans sound great, but how are you going to bankroll them?
I mean, you're absolutely right that, you know, the fiscal inheritance of a Labour government, if we're fortunate enough to win power, will be really, really challenging, far beyond anything that the incoming Labour government experienced in '97. And we have seen what's happened when the Conservatives crashed the economy, and what happens when you don't have serious plans about how you'll manage the economy and taking a responsible approach. That's why everything that we set out, we've got a plan behind it about how we're going to pay for it and the costs running alongside it. So we would put more teachers into our classrooms by ending the tax breaks that private schools enjoy. The evidence is clear that would raise considerable sums of money that we can invest in state education. So for me, it's also a question of priorities. You know, if the vast majority of our children go to state schools, we could raise that money by ending tax breaks on private schools to deliver a better education, more teachers, better mental health support for all of our children.
OK, Bridget, fine. What do you say to people who say this sounds like the politics of envy? Because not everybody who goes to a private school is a toff or goes to a place like Eton or isn't a massively wealthy overseas student. A great many aspirational middle-class parents put everything into private education. They just about can afford to survive because they want the best for their child. Those are the kind of children that we force out of the private sector if Labour scraps the tax breaks. And it will put those kids back into the state system. It won't affect the richest who will continue to pay the extortionate fees. So this tax on aspiration actually it hammers those who are striving hard to make ends meet to get the best for their children. This is a tax on aspiration from the Labour Party.
I think the vast majority of people in our country who send their children to state schools are also aspirational, ambitious, and they want the best for their children too. I won't ever criticise individual parents for the choices that they make, and I have no problem if parents choose to opt for a private school. There are sometimes lots of reasons why parents will do that. But my priority as Secretary of State for Education in that Labour government will be to drive up standards in our state schools. And I think ending the tax breaks on private schools is a straightforward and relatively modest measure that would allow us to do more, to get more teachers into our classrooms, to deliver better outcomes for all of our children.
Well, that's one we can ask our viewers about too. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, Bridget Phillipson. And if you have got a view on that, private versus state education, and whether or not, if you're struggling to make ends meet and send your kids to a private school, whether or not something like that would actually just put the kibosh on it, then get in touch.
Yeah, I mean, I went to a comprehensive and I'm proud of that, but I also, really respect and admire people who save all their money, particularly, like a lot of Asian parents, people that own the corner shops near me, they put everything into their children's education and they're struggling to get the best for their child. They're the parents and they're the kids that be forced out of the system by Labour's tax this way. I just don't think it's as simple as they make out.
No, and it's all about choice anyway, isn't it, really? We should all have the choice. Yeah. Anyway, let us know your view. gbviews@gbnews.com. All the papers up next. This is GB News Breakfast.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Anne and Martin. Shall we have a look at today's newspapers? We can see the front page there of the Sunday Times, leading with almost 30% of students quitting some degree courses because they're struggling to cope at university.
And the Mail asks, was the French patrol boat to blame for the migrant drownings yesterday in the Channel?
The Sunday Telegraph reveals ministers will hire more barges to house asylum seekers and will host up to 5,000 people in student accommodation and office blocks.
And the Observer leads with calls for safer routes to cross the Channel. There's also a picture of Lioness Alex Greenwood consoling a Colombian player after England won in the quarter-finals. That's the picture you were talking about.
That's right. It's a lovely picture of compassion, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the Star says that boffins have come up with a secret plan to stop an alien invasion by inviting them to play chess. We'll look into that later, find out what's going on.
Absolutely bonkers. And to help us make sense of that, we have James Woodhousen, broadcaster and author, and Emma Wolfe, of course, journalist and author. So welcome to both of you. Emma, shall we kick off with one of yours?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting topic. Heartbreak for men who are childless in the Times.
Yeah, this is a story that absolutely just jumped out at me. We talk a lot about women and about women's desire to be mothers and, you know, the pain of women that can't become mothers naturally or themselves. But we don't talk about men so much. We don't talk, well, barely at all. We don't talk about men who are childless and who are terribly broody and who are seeing families around them, who are seeing other people being dads and can't have children, haven't had children, and meet women maybe who've already passed that stage in their life. For whatever reason, I've written so much about my own infertility and then having a baby, that kind of journey. And we talk a lot about women. We don't talk about how men feel. A quarter of men now in their 40s are over the age of 42 have not had children and many of them would love to.
It's a very interesting societal trend. We're having children when we're older. We're having fewer children. A lot of that is the cost of it. But also there's the career element. So a lot of professional women now are putting off having children. They might have IVF or they can't have them at all because they leave it so long. And meanwhile, the men... I used to write about this, and it really does impact men. I mean, I was incredibly broody. I wanted my kids...
And broody is not a word that we associate with men.
Yeah.
We think broody is about your maternal feeling, or feeling of being pregnant, the feeling of holding your baby. But it's a feeling that men can have too, being broody.
Yeah.
And is this men who are single, or are they married to women who don't want babies?
Well, it
or is
depends.
it just about everything?
Well, this man has written the book, a chap called Robert Nurdon has written the book about this, which is why it's in the Sunday Times. And he is on his own and he has a partner, but he was meeting women around the age of sort of in their 40s, who didn't want children. So his partner now actually has children, has grown-up sons, but it's not the same.
No.
James, what do you make of this?
Well, I think people don't have children, if you look at Japan, quite often because they don't see a future for themselves. That's why the birth rate is so low there. It's going down very precipitously.
It's the world's lowest, I believe.
Yeah, I think Korea is now exceeding it, really. And
how do you mean they don't see a future?
Well, they look at the world around them and they think, well, you know, am I going to have a job? Are my kids going to have a job? Is this much of a world to grow up in? You know, and all of these things. And I think the other thing to remember is there's this dreadful green movement called birth strike, which maintains that every child you have will worsen climate change. And that is a background kind of Malthusian feeling that we have, that you're only adding to the problems if you have a child.
I love your academic approach, but almost every woman I know, if they haven't had children and want them, it's other reasons. It's circumstantial. They haven't met the right person. They can't. They're infertile. Whatever it is. I don't think, and I talk to so many women about this, and men, I don't think that it's really usually to do with, you know, these fundamental issues about the future of the planet or anything. I mean, it's just...
It's a fascinating topic.
Scholarly, not academic.
It's a very personal choice.
It's a fascinating topic. And Emma, thank you for coming into bat for the men. James, shall we move on? Something completely different, but very, very interesting as well. This is the effect of banning diesel lorries, apparently in 2040. And guess what? The hauliers are warning it could destroy their industry.
Well, this is a bit of a sort of storm in a cliche, really. I mean, the first thing to realise is that 2040 is a hell of a long way off, right? It's 17 years off. And right now, Scania in HGVs has an electric truck or electric lorry, but there are very few of them about. Tesla announced one. We haven't heard a lot about it. So to worry too much about electrification 17 years away, you know, that we won't be able to make it, is, I think, you know, crying wolf a little bit too early.
Well, 17 years is a blink of an eye, and it's going to take a big battery to haul tons and tons
that's right.
of cargo.
Well, the progress is alarmingly slow in this area, right? I mean, if anything needs electrification, it's lorries, because they are very polluting. They do gum up cities with their fumes. And it would be a great step forward if we had the charging points and the lorry technology to introduce this way before 2040. No, exactly. There's a lot of R&D, research and development, that needs to be done. So let's not be alarmist about it. I think what it does demonstrate is how easily the government can declare a target. 2040, no more diesel trucks. You know, great. Anybody can say those 6 words. Whether it will happen is an entirely different matter.
Well, or should it happen? I mean, how about being kind to the haulage industry and giving them a reprieve. I mean, that would be more popular, surely. Who wants to scrap their entire fleet of trucks and go electric? And that cost will get passed on to the consumers, surely.
Well, something needs to happen, and I'm not, and I'm not a sort of boring tree hugger, but something needs to happen. You cycle through central London, and the stuff that is coming out of some of these trucks, I don't even know what they're doing in central London,
Or delivering stuff to people who click to buy at home.
I know, but in other major cities you don't get haulage of those kind of polluting and of that size and of that heft going through the middle of your cities in the middle of the day. It's just, honestly, it's madness.
Most people live here, and we all
talk about
expect the world to land on our feet.
Black smoke pouring out the back of this stuff, Martin. When you're not in a car, when you're not protected by windows and metal casing, when you're cycling along or walking, that's pollution. Forget you, Les.
OK, well, just to keep everybody on their toes, let's talk about gender-neutral loos.
Yeah.
Thorny subject.
So these are proposals from ministers, I think headed by Kemi Badenoch, who I think is a thoroughly good egg. She is putting forward proposals to reverse the rise, the staggering rise, really, of gender-neutral lavatories in our public spaces. These moves would mean that all new public buildings and private offices would need to have a male lavatory and a female lavatory, and they would have to provide single-sex facilities. And actually, this comes from mostly women, but also elderly people, saying that they do find gender-neutral lavatories quite distressing and they don't want to be sharing spaces.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, very quickly, because we've been training it all morning, none of us got a blooming clue what it means. James, I have to probe you, pun intended. This thing about boffins plan to invite aliens to play chess.
Well, the thing is, it's in the Daily Star, so it's got to be true.
Yeah.
And the idea is that...
I can't believe they haven't got Psycho on their front page this morning. Well, everything is Psycho this, Psycho baked.
Well, they got a page 3 as usual, but let's skip that. The most interesting thing about this story, right, is not just that we should converse with them by playing chess, but that a Swedish futurologist, which is the sort of dumb version of what I do, forecasting, at Oxford University, Anders Sandberg, said, some people think it's really risky to say where we are by offering aliens a chess game, because that gives an address to where to send the war fleet. This is a serious academic, there is an academic, from Oxford, saying we mustn't offer, Queen's Knight to Pawn 4 or whatever it is, because the war fleet will attack us if we make the wrong gambit. Yeah. Amazing stuff from Oxford University.
I still don't understand.
I think I'm more confused now by this front page than I was before, but that's kind of the star for you, isn't it, really?
You're not meant to understand it, are you?
Academic challenges alien to chess match. That's got to be a great way to round off this fantastic morning.
Yes, thank you very much.
Emma
Absolutely.
Wolf. Superb.
Yeah. Now, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe is transforming the city into a place with an explosion of creative energy, as it always does.
It does. Artists and performers will take to hundreds of stages across the city to present shows and chase their dreams in the industry. Plus, there is always something for everyone.
Yeah, there is. You have to go around looking for it, but it's there. Joining us now is our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. A very good morning. Is it building up the excitement there, Tony?
Good morning, yes. Well, I would say it's quite early doors. I imagine a lot of the acts who were on late into the evening last night are probably, maybe some of them still rolling out of pubs at this early hour on a Sunday. However, a Sunday, unlike a lot of other jobs, these performers are still going full speed into show after show. And I am lucky enough to be joined by one of them. I'm joined by Jez Bond, he's a magician. Jez, thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you, and hello everybody.
And so tell me about your show, Car Crash Magic. Tell me about the genesis of it and, some of the things audiences can expect.
So this has been my first year here at the Fringe. I've produced the Jezzo's Car Crash Magic, which is full of stupidness, silliness, lots of fire, a little bit of danger, loads of danger, and just craziness. We just crash through jokes, we crash through a load of magic, some good stuff. It's great.
Fab. And you were just telling me before we came on there that, magic is in your blood, essentially. Tell me a wee bit, and performance, actually, for that matter. Tell me a bit about
that. Yeah, so I grew up in a magical family. My father is an illusionist and an illusion builder for lots of other magicians as well. So we grew up as children, there's 4 of us, but we grew up thinking that doves, girls being sawn in half, was normal.
That's incredible. And are any people sawn in half at your show this year?
We do use blades, yeah. Yeah.
Better not. I don't want to spoil too much. And another interesting thing actually about you when we were talking is that this is your first time at the Fringe, you know. So quickly, did it meet your expectations? Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most overwhelming, the largest arts festival in the world, and to be part of it is amazing. And to be part of such a fantastic venue as the Gilded Balloon is just, everything is just still so exciting, but crazy inside one's head. It's so overwhelming.
Amazing. Well, look, we're almost done out of time. Is there maybe a tiny little bit of magic that you could just sprinkle to set the studio's morning?
I thought you'd say that. So I brought a handkerchief. Right, okay. Just very, very quickly, I'll try and do this nice and high. I'll just tie a little knot in it like so. Okay, let's just tie like... There you go, perfect. Okay, now, if you watch the knot, okay, it'll jump from the top to the bottom. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Magic and illusion, obviously not impressed, okay, but if you click your fingers, I find if you click your fingers, it always becomes a trick. You can actually slide the knot all the way off like so. Get rid of the knot, we don't need the knot. The only problem is, it does ruin the handkerchiefs.
Oh,
yeah.
I know. Well, I don't envy your dry cleaner, certainly at the end of this Fringe when you've got 20 plus handkerchiefs to get fixed. But hopefully that's a wee bit of magic to start your day off. Back to you in the studio.
Yeah, that really was lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Very impressive.
Very good. Yeah, enjoyed a bit of sleight of hand.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got some lovely tree stories. Thank you very, very much. Amanda reminds everybody, just because a tree is on your land doesn't mean that you are the moral owner of the tree. They belong to us all.
Yeah, and Wendy, thank you for pointing out that I was wrong about the major oak, Robin Hood Street in Shield Forest. I remember as a kid it was vandalised, set fire to, then a big chunk was cut out of it. But Wendy said it can still be visited. It is still alive. Wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of them here said, oh, yes, yeah, Ray in Huntingdon says, my neighbour had a walnut tree that used to hang over the small car park at the back of our houses. When the walnuts fell, they dented all of the cars. It was a protected tree, but we were allowed to get it felled as long as we planted another walnut sapling.
And imagine if
things fall off trees.
Yeah.
OK, right, well, we're heading towards 9 o'clock, so do stick with us. We've got lots more to talk about. You're watching Breakfast on GB News.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Patagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so, a mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today, some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers, and that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice though the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day. Whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers. And temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But bomb.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Sunday the 13th of August. Today, another tragedy in the Channel. The government now facing further pressure to tackle the crisis at migrant crossings. 6 people died after a small boat sank off the coast of France.
And England has set up a Women's World Cup semi-final with co-host Australia after they beat Colombia 2-1 yesterday. Aidan McGee has all the details a little later.
And August holiday sales are booming as people are trying to get away from the typical UK weather. Spain and Greece apparently the most popular destinations this summer. Have you booked yours?
And the important question, how will the weather look like today? Here's Marco Patagna from the Met Office.
We've got another day of sunshine and showers across the UK. Some of the showers could be on the heavy side. I'll have more details though later.
So it's lovely to be with you. A very good morning to all. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We found ourselves talking a lot about trees today, haven't we? And oh no, I've lost what I was going to say. But you've got some lovely tree stories for us.
Yeah, John was saying here, I worked the night shift at Kingston Aerospace on the night of the '87 hurricane.
Oh yes, I remember.
Driving home at 4 o'clock and saw hundreds of felled trees on the road and on pavements. It looked like the aftermath of World War III. Really sad. Gaps in the tree lines are still evident today in Surrey.
I'll never forget that night, I must say. And what was so amazing is that I was trying to get into work because I was doing breakfast telly then, and every way you turned, there was a felled tree across the road. Pam says, when my mother was a child, her father planted a cherry tree in their garden in Ilkley, and many happy hours were spent under that tree by 4 generations of my family. More than 80 years later, long after my grandparents had died and the house had been sold, I walked past the garden and I saw some cherries that had fallen from our tree into the road. I scooped up a handful, took them home in Shepton Mallet and planted them. Just one, took root and grew into a 6-foot sapling. But I only have a tiny garden, so I took it to my brother's home near Bath, where he planted it in his garden. It now grows tall and healthy, and it's a constant and happy reminder of my grandparents.
Fantastic anecdote. This is all because Robbie Williams was to chop down a big tree on his land and he's falling out with his neighbours in Kensington. Amanda, a great way to end this. Just because a tree is on your land, it doesn't mean that you are the moral owner of the tree. They belong to us all.
They do, and they're very important to us too. I think to our mental health as much as anything else. Now, as always, it's been a tumultuous week with the crisis escalating in the Channel, along with further doctor strikes and even controversy over a burned-down 18th century pub. Coming up at 9:30 to reflect on all of this, as if it's not enough, Camilla Tominey. Hi.
Hello, good morning. Lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you. You've got an awful lot to talk about today.
Well, look, it's been a really busy and indeed tragic news agenda with a lot of the Sunday papers, I think all but one splashing on these deaths in the Channel. I mean, it was meant to be the Stop the Boats week for the government, and it's gone calamitously wrong, not just with this, but also with the Bibi Stockholm having to be cleared of its migrants. The migrants that did end up there have had to be taken out because of this outbreak of Legionnaires. I mean, I think this... I was saying
It wasn't an outbreak, was it?
No. It was there already.
It
was there already. I mean, you would have thought that perhaps it had been checked for bacterial problems in the first place. I mean, I did say this to Robert Jenrick last week. I think our audience is largely behind what the government is doing, but the execution is repeatedly annoying. And now we see a blame game carried out in the newspapers. We've got Ian Duncan-Smith, I believe, blaming the French.
Yes.
We've got Marco Longhi blaming Labour. We've got Labour blaming...
Tories.
The Tories. It's a complete mess. Labour's lack of a solution beyond what the government's already suggested is, I think, problematic for Starmer. I think Stephen Kinnock has, in one hand, talked to the Mirror today about what they would do, which seems to be suggesting some degree of closer alignment with the EU and other matters, but it doesn't really solve the crisis. And indeed, he was the person who last week said that they would keep the migrant barges because they needed to work with the infrastructure that they have. So I'll be putting those sorts of questions to Sean Woodward. He's our Labour representative on the show. He was also the former Northern Ireland Secretary, so I'm going to speak to him about that police data breach.
Oh, gosh.
Also going to be discussing immigration in general with Alexander Downer, because he is the former Higher Commissioner to the UK from Australia. But when he was Australian Foreign Minister, he very much was behind Tony Abbott's quest to stop the boats landing in Australia by having people processed in Nauru. So let's find out from him. He also wrote this formative paper for the government on how they should stop the boats. I'm going to ask him, well, what have they done with this dossier? They seem to have taken all of the recommendations, but completely cocked most of them up. So we'll try and get answers from him.
As you say, there is this blame game. It just seems to me we're at an impasse, and I wonder if we can ever stop this, because the Bibi Stockholm is the only boat that's ever been stopped.
Yes.
And it rolls on and rolls on. We spoke to the Shadow Education Minister earlier, and part of the detail alluded to by Stephen Kinnock in the Mirror today is ensure genuine refugees can contribute to Britain, which I put to her, would that mean work visas for those who are processed? And she said yes. That is something that we would be
But then wouldn't that
interested in.
incentivise more people to come across and game the system?
Yes.
I mean, we also seemingly have this problem, particularly from the way that the Home Office seems to categorise the people coming over. We have this problem distinguishing between genuine asylum seekers and economic migrants. We had a case, actually, funnily enough, our rival, the BBC, not pointing out that it was interviewing a so-called refugee who actually said in the interview, no, I've come here for a better life.
Yes.
That's not the same as escaping persecution.
No, it's
Why
not.
is there this dishonesty about it? And therefore, everybody that says, well, hang on a minute, you know,
refugees are refugees, but economic migrants are something quite different. They get labelled with the sort of bigoted, racist, you don't want anyone to come into this country brush. They're saying, no, I don't mind having a degree of immigration, but can we just control it and find out exactly who is coming here, when and for what purpose? The other big story that you've mentioned, and I'm really delighted to say that we've got Andy Street coming on the show. It's his only broadcast interview.
He's the mayor.
Mayor of West Midlands. He's obviously heavily invested in this Crooked House pub destruction that's gone on in Dudley. I mean, we've been watching this story all week. What on earth has gone on there? I mean, it strikes me that it isn't just the pub that's a bit crooked, OK? Something's gone wrong, and I'm going to ask Andy about that. He's talked about wanting to rebuild this pub brick by brick. Legally, what redress is there to the people of Dudley who have been campaigning now in their droves over the past few days to have this historic pub it's so significant for the local area. People came from miles around to visit this place, and it's been razed to the ground. How does it happen?
Much more than a pub. Historical and local significance, brought the community together. Sounds like a fantastic show. Camilla Tominey show, always the best.
Also,
I think,
one more
Sunday
thing.
Mornings.
We've got this Robert Kennedy interview. So Robert Kennedy's running to be one of the Democratic hopefuls for president, son of Bobby Kennedy, nephew of JFK. He's done this interview that we're going to be running all day. It's going to kick off in my show. It's going to be talking about, as all of us who were alive at the time remember, not me, I'm too young, but where he was on the day he found out that his uncle JFK had been assassinated. So that's fascinating. That's also coming up.
That's one of those things that everybody can usually remember.
I'm a bit too young, Anne.
Yeah, I am.
Remember where you were, Anne?
No, I was very young, but I remember I was literally in my living room learning about it. Burst into tears straight away.
Really?
Irish Catholic family.
Yeah, of course.
And but I also remember where I was the day his father died, when Bobby Kennedy died, because I was, we'd just bought a new house and it had no lawn at all, and I was sowing the seed, boxes and boxes of seed. I was sowing away, and then we all heard about Bobby Kennedy too. So
well, it's a fascinating interview. I think we're playing out different segments across the course of the day.
He's got a very interesting personal life.
He's got quite a complex personal life, and he's
exactly,
had a few troubles, which he talks about with drink and alcohol, and he's got some interesting political ideas as well. But over the course of the day, stay tuned, because we've got lots of different segments from that interview.
Great stuff.
Sounds superb, Camilla. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It does. Right, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the headlines. And Hawaii, the death toll from the Maui wildfires reached 89 on Saturday, making it the deadliest US wildfire in more than a century. The total, of course, is likely to rise in coming days because they've got search teams out with cadaver dogs, and they're sifting through all of the ruins.
And China's foreign ministry has condemned a brief US visit by Taiwan Vice President William Lai, saying it was a separatist and a troublemaker through and through. China has repeatedly denounced Lai's trip, which includes another stopover in San Francisco on Wednesday.
And the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, is open to requests for patients from devolved nations to be treated on NHS England amid record waiting lists. Mr Barclay has invited both Scottish and Welsh health ministers to discuss how all parts of the UK can tackle wait times.
Let's turn to the sports now. A legendary broadcaster, Aidan McGee, joins us. Let's kick off with the Lionesses.
Yes, you're legendary on everybody, you are.
I know.
He's a legend.
You can't turn his praise, do you?
So, mate, Lionesses roaring, showing the boys how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the pressure was on. They went into yesterday's match, not just the favourites for the game, but they'd also been installed as the pre-tournament favourites. That's on account of Brazil, Canada, USA and Germany all having been eliminated before the match or earlier in the tournament. And, yeah, they fell behind and Colombia weren't to be sniffed out. They had knocked out Germany in the group stages, Anne, so they were somebody who could bloody the noses of a team like England. And England haven't really, apart from the China game, hadn't really hit their stride. But you know what? They just seem to know how to get the job done. And they capitalised on a goalkeeping error just before half-time. That was Lauren Hemp, and then obviously late on in the second half, it was their winner by Alessia Russo, her first goal of the tournament. And now, so we look ahead now to Australia on Wednesday, the Matildas as they're known, and that's an 11:30 kick-off in Sydney. And the pressure, again, is going to be on because they're against the host nation. Emma Hayes, the Chelsea manager, said before the tournament that she fancied Australia. They weren't one of the teams that you'd probably put in the elite 3 or 4. They don't really have any history in this tournament, but because of the home nation...
The crowd will be with them, though, won't it?
Without question, without question. Sam Kerr, the Chelsea striker, plays for Australia, so she'll want to get one up against the players in the country she plies her trade in. And so, you know, I think that now, though, I don't see... we mentioned Spain, didn't we?
Yeah.
And they scored a lot of goals. But England, as I say, they're getting the job done. They're not conceding goals. They're scoring goals, or they were in the third game anyway. They're going to have Lauren James back if they get through to the final, because she's got a two-match ban for the stamping incident in the last round. And so I think England are justifiably the favourites in this. And I think, you know, but they're going there as European champions. They arrived there as European champions, so there's no reason they shouldn't be. They have to live with that tag.
Yeah, let's talk about Harry Kane. Not quite the dream start. In fact, it seems like the curse of Kane for Bayern Munich.
Well, they worked so hard yesterday, didn't they? We saw their James Bond-style video that they released, Bayern Munich. We saw the Instagram video that he put on where he explains to Tottenham fans why he'd left the club. He felt it was his time. And then they worked hard to get him registered before 2 o'clock. And that's customary around European leagues. You know, you have to register a player before a certain time. To get him to play last night, they came on as a 64th minute substitute. Bayern Munich very rarely lose any games. They're 11 times... They've won the Bundesliga 11 times in a row. They won the Champions League 3 times in the last 19 years or whatever it is. And so to lose against RB Leipzig 3-0 in a showpiece game, it's the same as we had last weekend, the Community Shield. It's the league winners against the cup winners. So, yeah, it leads people to start thinking, should Harry Kane now leave Bayern Munich if he wants to win trophies? Or it's the curse of Harry Kane. But, yeah, he was... Listen, he's not going to be... defining his time at Bayern Munich based on that match.
He was hoping to do a bit of a John Terry and sort of turn up and lift the trophy that he didn't even play in the cup for, wasn't he? But anyway, it was cruelly denied.
He was.
What else have we got?
Well, in the Premier League, we've got Fulham wins for Fulham yesterday away at Everton. Newcastle very impressive against Aston Villa, 5-1 at home. Villa went down to 10 men. Crystal Palace, Roy Hodgson got into a spat on the touchline with a player who must be a good 60 years younger than him.
Yeah,
and he jabbed his stomach and he apologised afterwards. But Palace went to Sheffield United and won 1-0. It was Roy Hodgson's 76th birthday yesterday.
And he's still feisty.
He is.
Forest were quite feisty, but came a bit short against the Gunners.
They did, but look, that's a tough assignment on the first day, isn't it? Full house at the Emirates, as you'd expect. A 30-minute delay as well because of an e-ticketing system. That was real farcical scenes there.
Do you think that's going to be the future of football, having to beep your way in and it will cause all these huge tailbacks?
Well, listen, it's not even that new. QPR, my team, tried it 2 years ago. We were stuck outside the ground, myself and Dean, one of our producers. We went to the game. We were stuck outside Loftus Road for half an hour. They had to delay the kick-off. Now, that was a fixture against Millwall, which is quite high risk. Yeah. And so it caused all sorts of problems on the day. And eventually, they kicked off with the game, I think, about 15 minutes late, and still people were getting through afterwards. And you start to wonder, what's wrong with the ticketing system that's been in operation for the previous 1,000 years, you know? Yeah. So, but, no, look, it'll line it out. The big clubs have got the resources to be able to do that. Arsenal make plenty of money. They make about £4 million on a match day. So they'll be able to smooth it out, I'm sure.
And it was a bit of a bad day for newcomers, Luton?
It was, yeah. 4-1 down at Brighton, but that was their first goal in the top flight since May 1992 when they lost to Notts County. Anne's friend Nick Owen would have been watching keenly.
Oh, I'm sure, yes, I'm sure he would.
And they scored a goal. They scored a goal down there, which was great. But as I say, they're not going to be judging their progress against teams like Brighton away from home. They're established. They've got to get 10 wins and 6 draws, I would say, to get to 36 points. And if you look at it, the teams that come up don't always go straight back down. You know, we see maybe one of the three that comes up.
Forest clung on.
Well, they did, exactly, yeah, exactly. So I think they've got everything to play for, 37 games to go. And look, they played all right yesterday. They didn't do badly. They didn't disgrace themselves in any way.
And very quickly, at last, a victory for Anthony Joshua.
Exactly, yeah. I felt he was delaying a little bit. It's almost like giving the crowd a bit of just a few rounds to get their money's worth, because they couldn't postpone. They couldn't with the drugs issue last week with Dillian White. They couldn't move that fight away because there was another show to get on, so they had to find a replacement. And the Norwegian, the Robert Hellenius, the Nordic nightmare, who isn't a nightmare to anyone who's any good, but Anthony Joshua knocked him out in 7 rounds. His first stoppage in 2.5 years. Whether that prepares him for assignments ahead, i.e. Deontay Wilder in January, I have my doubts.
But this bloke, the Nordic nightmare, I mean, he had a nightmare. He was basically a bit of a journeyman who was just wheeled out to fill the card, right?
Yeah, there was no way Anthony Joshua was going to lose that fight yesterday. But you know, if you're going to convince casual fans about boxing and your pedigree, you've got to be knocking out decent opponents. And it's not Anthony's fault, because Dillian White returned that failed drugs test last week, voluntary drugs test. Yeah. So, as I say, I think he's going to need a real vigorous training camp if he's going to prepare for Wilder.
Aidan McGee, as ever, a knockout performance from you. Always a pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
And we're going to be talking holidays. Have you booked yours yet? You'll want to know all the latest news. That's coming up in just a couple of moments.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 9:19. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Anne and Martin.
Now, heat waves aren't stopping British holidaymakers from racing for the sun as holiday prices go through the roof after stagnating for years in a row.
Yeah, in fact, Europe's travel giant, TUI, said its average selling price is almost 30% up, whilst bookings made in the past week were 5% higher than last summer.
Well, Nick Calvin, editor of the travel website The Points Guy UK, joins us this morning. Top of the morning to you, Nick. So I'm assuming basically Brits are looking out their window, seeing the dreadful weather, and they're getting clicking and going abroad.
That's right. Well, I'm looking out of my window now and it's not looking like the August that we'd hoped for. I think lots of people experienced the weather in June and thought, you know what, we can manage it at home this summer. And prices, like you said, have rocketed. And I think it was this idea that you could stay at home and brave out August on our shores. But the reality is very different and people are now flocking back to the travel companies and looking for deals. Actually, I've got some, it's not all bad news. So whilst things were expensive, especially if you're booking earlier in the year, there are still some brilliant deals to be had if you're trying to get away in the next couple of weeks.
Where's the cheapest, easiest, fastest place to go to? 'Cause you've given me the idea. I just don't think I can face any more of this British weather.
So I was having a look this morning. One of my favourite ways to find deals is to use Google Flights. You can bring up a map, and it can provide a really flexible way of searching for things. And return flights in August for a week away to places like Nice for £77 return and Barcelona for £96 return. That's if you're going to work out your own accommodation. But providers like TUI, JetBlue Holidays, Love Holidays, they're also doing holidays for 7 nights for around the £300 mark. If you're willing to search flights, yeah.
And for the benefit of the radio listeners who can't see the images on the screen, there are some textbook British men abroad with their shirts off, bottle white skin, bombing into the sea. And I think they've been at the old cervezas. One of the things that strikes me, though, about the holiday business, Nikki, I'm about to go to Wales, and I'm bracing myself for that to be very, very expensive and very, very busy. So actually, I've got a pal, my barber, Sean. He's going to Turkey, and it's cheaper because people are going for all-inclusive deals where prices are guaranteed. Are people going for that sort of deal this year?
Absolutely. I think with the cost of living crisis, people are not willing to give up a holiday. They still want to get away. They still want to enjoy that week or 2 weeks in the sun, but they're wanting to really cap their costs when they're away. So these all-inclusive deals to places like Turkey, in fact, Heathrow saying that 73,000 departures they had to Turkey in July, which was the most they've ever had out of Heathrow. So people are really flocking to destinations like that. The numbers prove it. And by having an all-inclusive holiday, you go away, especially if you're a family, you know what the cost is going to be before you go. Lots of holiday companies actually allow you to pay in installments. And so you pay it off over the course of a few months. And once you get there, you can really relax without having to worry about all those extra excursions or activities or food or drink that if you go on a non-all-inclusive package, you're going to have to worry about.
It's funny, isn't it? We've been talking about the fact that we just can't put up with this horrible weather in Britain much longer, and it's giving us all an appetite to get away. But, conversely, there have been reports of extreme heat, for instance, in Spain, and those terrible fires in Rhodes. Have they put people off those particular destinations?
So I think Greece in particular, it was really devastating what happened there. Of course, what we've just seen happen in Hawaii is even more devastating. And so these kind of natural disasters can occur anywhere in the world, but it hasn't really dampened the spirits of Brits who really do want to get away. And I think we've become used to braving that July or August heat when you're in places like Spain or Italy or Greece or Turkey. It's become the norm, and people are willing to live through that and enjoy it and enjoy the sun, especially if they're by a pool, sipping on a cocktail, enjoying themselves. Yeah. And it's just the rain. We want to get away from the rain and the gloom. I'm looking outside my window again now, and I understand why people's mindsets might still be saying, do you know what? Notwithstanding the heat waves, we're going to still go. We want to be away.
And I wonder, Nikki, after lockdowns and people losing the ability to travel, if now it's like, hang the expense. Do you know what? Holidays are just so important to me very quickly.
Yeah, we've seen that for sure. Once lockdown restrictions were lifted, I think there was a period coming out of COVID where people were a little bit more nervous about traveling and getting on planes. I mean, that is gone. You don't see that whatsoever anymore. And people really want to get out there. I think we saw a spate of people booking bigger trips if they were able to, those dream trips that they always wanted to do.
Okay,
that
Nick,
could be the
I'm afraid
you've convinced us. We're out of time. Do stay tuned, because Camilla's up next with the Camilla Tominey Show.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see a mixed bag of weather across the UK over the next 24 hours or so. A mixture of sunshine and showers with more persistent rain arriving later from the southwest. Back to the detail for today, though. Plenty of showers around towards the north and west of the UK today. Some of them on the heavy, potentially thundery side, particularly towards the north and northeast of Scotland. More in the way of sunshine down towards the south and east between those showers. And that will allow temperatures to climb into the low 20s Celsius, peaking in the southeast at around 22 or 23 degrees. Notice, though, the rain gathering down towards the southwest of the UK, and that will start to push its way in from the southwest as we go through this evening into the overnight period. Some of that turning quite heavy, potentially even thundery in nature, as it makes progress further into England and Wales by the morning on Monday. To the north and northwest, though, we do see some clear spells, but also a scattering of showers. And wherever you are, it's a pretty warm night once again. Temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius, 13 to 16 degrees, 16 down towards the southeast is a pretty muggy 61 in Fahrenheit. As for Monday itself, well, we'll see a pretty unsettled day across England and Wales. Some quite heavy, even thundery bursts of rain at times, again moving in from the southwest as we go through the day, whereas towards the north and northwest for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland a brighter picture, but here too a scattering of showers, and temperatures a little bit academic given the pretty unsettled weather across the south of the UK, peaking in the high teens towards the north and down to 21 or 22 across southern parts of England.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK